Welcome to Pensari Basketball. The Toronto Raptors get a very early Christmas present from Gary Trent Jr. as he surprisingly opts in to the final year of a 3-year extension that he signed 2 summers ago. And we're going to talk today about what this means and what it doesn't mean. So here's what it doesn't mean. It does not mean that Gary Trent Jr. is definitely going to be on the roster next year. It does not mean that this means that the Raptors are running it back. And I do not believe that this means that the Raptors are going to drastically alter their draft strategy because Gary Trent Jr. is back. But I do believe that this is a very good thing for the Toronto Raptors. And here's why. If you're new around here, my name is Robert. Grab your coffee. Let's get to it. If you haven't hit subscribe, please do so. We are slowly inching our way up to 10,000 subscribers. My goal is 10,000 subscribers by the first day of the season. So let's get that going. All right. So what does this mean? I stayed up till 9 a.m. this morning thinking that this news was going to break early in the morning, as these things often do, and that I was going to be able to do an emergency live. Of course, I end up going to sleep. I wake up to 1,000 text messages. Gary's back, Gary's back, Gary's back. Did I see this coming? Not really. Not really. I did not see him opting in. But I have been very firm, at least over the last 5 to 6 months, that I would like to see him come back. I'm going to share with you why I think that is. It's a multi-pronged reason, and if you've been a fan of this channel for a long time, or if you are one of the many people who maybe discovered me on Raptors Digest, you maybe know me as the guy who did not like Gary Trent Jr. for a very long time. I got into a lot of arguments with people on Facebook groups and other Reddit groups and stuff about whether or not Gary Trent Jr. fits with what the Raptors are trying to do, whether he's a good defender when he was racking up all those steals a year ago. And to be honest, I've been pretty firm that he just was very overrated by Raptor fans. When Raptor fans were blowing him up, I was like, nah, Norman Powell's still the better player. This is still an upside play. And somewhere around this season, my opinion on Gary changed completely. And I'm going to share with you why. It's not as obvious as he did one thing and everything changed, but it is a few things. Number one of my biggest criticisms of Gary Trent Jr. was that just like Fred VanVleet, he was a guard who could not finish in the paint. He finished in the paint at a really good level this year, to the point where something that I considered a bit of a weakness in his first and second year in Toronto became pretty much a strength this year. So I think that showed me that he was someone who was willing to not only acknowledge where his gaps were as a player, but also was someone who was capable of working on it in an offseason and showing that development. I think his paint finishing, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe it went from like 57 or 58% to like 70% 3 feet and in. It was very impressive. And too often, previous year, there were bunnies at the rim, little floaters, little flip shots that he was doing, sometimes transition layups that just wouldn't go in. They would just eke out, and you're like, okay, this is a matter of, okay, he's not a great athlete. He's not overly long. This is he's just too small to finish at the rim over elite players, but he found a way. He found touch and maybe more strength. And I really liked what I saw from him offensively, even though, yes, the 3-point percentage did dip. I think that was true for all the Raptors across the board. There wasn't a Raptor that did not really hold true for. Everyone struggled. So I think that this is one of those things that shows you that he's somebody who has at least 3-level scorer potential. The second thing, I really liked how he performed in the clutch. Granted, with the pecking order issues that this team had and Nick Nurse's reluctance to go to anyone not named Pascal Siakam or Fred VanVleet for the final shot unless Scotty Barnes was having one of those games, Gary Trent Jr. was very efficient with the game on the line. And I think that shows you just what a valuable skill set he has. Now, to those of you who have been pining for Keyonte Goerge in the draft, take a look at what you have in Gary Trent Jr., man. It's a lot of the same stuff. It's a lot of the same stuff in a better defender, in a bigger athlete, right? Gary's about 6'5". He's got a 6'8" wingspan. Keyonte's 6'4". He's got a 6'6" wingspan. I think Gary's just about as good an athlete, if not a little bit better than Keyonte. And I think he's just about as efficient, if not a little bit more efficient, probably a little further along, definitely a little further along. Maybe the handle's not nearly as hot sauce, but his skills as an isolation scorer, he could get his shot off over anybody. And I think that in tough shot clock situations, that is something that you need. Now, too often in his first 2 years, we saw a lot of ball holding with Gary Trent Jr. I didn't really see that last year. I saw a lot less of that, and I saw a little bit more of what I would like to consider a willingness to make the right play. So many times, especially towards the second half of the season, I saw him pass it ahead in transition. These are some of the qualities that I really cherish in Scoot Henderson, Cason Wallace, Anthony Black, Victor Wembanyama, the ability to get off the ball, the need to not dominate the ball. Tracy McGrady often talked about, the ability to get your game off in three dribbles. Well, Gary can get his game off in 2 dribbles. And I think that that is a very valuable skill set, regardless of what the analytics say about him as a player. I think he is a very, very good offensive player. And for a team that is starving for 3-point shooting, creativity off the bounce, shot generation, I think that, I think he's a really good player. And at 24 years old, is an asset you would want to keep. And so that was part of the on court stuff that really that really forced me to shift my perspective on him. Now, I've always told you guys that I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. And if there's a player that I don't like, or there's a player that I don't believe in, or a player that I'm low on, and I start seeing something different from them, then I'm gonna change my tune, and I'm gonna acknowledge my gap, and I'm gonna say this change, that change, and I change. That's the way we grow. And so when I listened to Gary Trent Jr. respond to what I thought was very toxic treatment by Nick Nurse, you got a guy in a contract year, you understand that your allegiance is to Fred and Pascal and their stats and their contract, but where is that allegiance to Gary Trent Jr.? You're dancing him in and out of the lineup, you're calling him out in public, you're maybe not setting him up to succeed and giving him all those pet plays. He's not coming off the same quality of screens that Fred is. So where is his offense coming from? He's just basically like, okay, well, if he fits us, he fits us. If he does this, he fits us. If he doesn't fit us. Well, effectively, thank you, Nick Nurse. You basically tanked Gary Trent Jr.'s value in the trade market, and also, which is probably why the Raptors probably did not receive the level of offer that they were looking for him at the trade deadline from various suitors that could have really used the Gary Trent Jr. off the bench, or maybe even as a starter. You look at a team like the Denver Nuggets. Could they have used the Gary Trent Jr.? You look at a team like the Miami Heat, the 2 teams that just made it to the finals. I think they both could have used the Gary Trent Jr. off the bench. So to see him respond to that by not only being professional, but taking it to the other extreme, being overly professional. There was one quote that always sticks out, and anytime someone approaches me on the why have you changed your tune on Gary Trent Jr., the quote that I always bring up is him humbly saying, I prefer to be an energy giver instead of an energy taker. And you can tell that spiritually, the words and his body language and everything that he was saying was aligned with how he was playing. He had a really good synergy with Scottie. I think there were a couple times, I remember when I attended a game where he would go up to Scottie, and this is like right around the time when Scottie was facing all that drop coverage and, teams were sort of daring him to shoot, where he would be the first person to come up to Scottie Barnes in the huddle and be like, shoot that. You got to shoot that. He's encouraging him. And I thought that that was a sign of leadership and growth. He is further along in his career. He is a little bit older than Scottie. He is someone who should be taking on a leadership position on this team. And so instead of blasting the dude, he's encouraging him. And I really appreciated that about him. So this is all of what has gone into my shift in perspective on whether Gary can or cannot be a positive contributor for the Raptors going forward, and why I would love to see him back. Now to the contract. Gary may not have the market that he was anticipating when he signed this deal 2 years ago, right? Obviously, with the third-year player option, Masai Ujiri, Bobby Webster decided that they were going to give up everything to Gary Trent Jr. I was not a fan of this contract because I did not expect that there was any way in hell that he was going to underperform this contract. And I thought, okay, the Raptors are definitely going to lose him after 2 years. He's going to opt out, giving him maximum control to bet on himself not once, but twice. And I didn't like this because it's like you got nothing, right? On the 2+1 with Gary's extension 2 summers ago, you gave up term and you gave up option. It felt like a really bad move that was going to backfire. And I'm really happy it hasn't backfired. not saying that I'm happy for Gary Trent Jr. that his market value tanked this year, but I am saying that this has worked out about as well as you could have hoped for if you were a Raptor fan. Now, what does this actually mean? Well, it means that Gary Trent Jr. is extension eligible on July 7th. If the verbiage is to be believed on the report, which was this, interested in extension, this was, I believe, from Chris Haynes. And thankfully for all of us, Michael Grange has confirmed it. This is non-tampering talk for there's an extension pathway available to the Raptors, or there is a pathway or a plan in place to trade him with an extension. Now, or to trade him, like he's trade eligible today, which means that on draft night, the Raptors now have an extra asset that they can dangle in a trade if they so choose to. And I'm sure that they would have worked this out with him before they had a meeting with him. They had several meetings with him over the last couple of weeks. He's met with Darko Rajakovic. Obviously, he's been assured what his future is with this team and what the plan is going forward. This is not a decision that he made by himself. Oh, I just want to opt in and see where this goes. There is another shoe that has to drop here, which is either he's going to have a bet on yourself year ahead. Now, to those of you saying, his max extension that he's eligible for is a hefty raise over this $18.5 million. And I don't think that it's going to be there, because here's my perspective on this. Why opt in for 23-24 if 24-25 starting salary is going to be 27 million or 24 million? Why do that? Why not just opt out, renegotiate the contract? It doesn't, why take the discount on the first year? Unless the discount on the first year, which is the 18.5, is the concession to get the term and dollar amount that you want later. It's a bit of a handshake deal, a wink deal. Teams have done this in the past. I don't necessarily think that's the case. I think it's going to be either he's going to have a bet on yourself year, or he's going to get traded, or he's going to sign a 3 to 4 year extension, possibly with a player option that's going to be somewhat in line with the contract that he just accepted. So maybe another 355 type of deal where 18.5 starts to be more in line with the baseline value of that contract year to year. That's my perspective. I don't expect the Raptors to sign him for over 20 million. I don't think there were a lot of teams out there that would have extended him an offer over 20 million. There are teams with cap space that could use a player like Gary Trent Jr., namely the Orlando Magic. I think the Indiana Pacers could have used them. They could have gotten under the cap a bit. The San Antonio Spurs, the Houston Rockets. But there's a lot of free agents, right? And I don't necessarily think he's on the top of anyone's list in the guard section. And if that money did dry up, he would be left with mid-level exception offers. So this is a smart move by him and his camp as well. Now, moving forward, what do I actually think that this could mean for the Raptors? I think this completely changes what you can do on draft day. I think this is a huge gift. You have $18.5 million attached to a very serviceable player who is, for a lot of teams, a starter, for at minimum, a rotation player for every single team in the league, who is 24 years old, right, on an expiring deal. You can package that with anything you want. You could package that in a Pascal deal, if that's what's coming at you. You could package that in an OG deal. I would absolutely cry if, both those guys went out, since I happen to be a fan of both players. You can also use this to move up or move down in the draft. Potentially, this can be traded for a first round pick. You take a dead weight contract that maybe isn't guaranteed. Could this be the type of thing? I'm not saying that, contracts like Thaddeus Young, which are partially guaranteed, you can now take that dead weight contract back, which isn't fully guaranteed. And then that team will get Gary Trent Jr. Maybe they wouldn't have had the cap space to sign him outright. I believe they retain his bird rights in this situation. And in that case, you could probably, squeeze a first round pick, or maybe even move up 4 or 5 spots if that's where your mind is on this one. Personally, I would like to see him come back. I would like to see him come back because I think he fits with this roster. And I think the part of this equation that we haven't talked about at all, which I think is definitely worth talking about, and I don't know who's going to talk about it, but I want to be the one to talk about it for sure, is the impact that I think Darko Rajakovic could have on a player like Gary Trent Jr. So if we are to accept that he is a hard worker, and there's no way that you go from being a second round pick to where he is today as a player, in the first 4 or 5 years of your NBA career, if you're not a hard worker. So he is a hard worker. We'll accept that. I don't think you fix your rim finishing and your playmaking the way that he did last year if you're not a self-aware person and a coachable person. We can probably all agree that Nick Nurse was not the ideal coach for Gary Trent Jr., and maybe there was always a little bit of friction in terms of how they interacted. So having a coach that genuinely believes in you, or perhaps a coach that you believe in, who has a track record for developing wings like Mikal Bridges, wings like Devin Booker, wings like Desmond Bane. I hope that that would breed some amount of trust in someone like Gary Trent Jr., that this is a guy who can actually take you to the next level. Because what do all three of those players that I just mentioned have in common? They all developed as playmakers, all of them. They all developed, okay? And to the point where people often now look at guys like Desmond Bane and Devin Booker, where they started as non-playmakers, they ascended to secondary playmakers. I think in a pinch, either one of those players could probably do a game or two where they're your primary playmaker. That is a massive, massive ascension of playmaking talent. We often talk about improving shooting, improving conditioning, improving athleticism, improving this and that. We don't often talk about improving playmaking. And I think it is one of the important things to develop in players. And I think that this is one thing that is going to develop across the board. And if you really want to look at what was really lacking in the Toronto Raptors offense last year, apart from structure and talent and whatever else you want to say, honestly, it was playmaking. There were so many players who are non-playmakers on this roster, from Chris Boucher to Gary Trent Jr. You have so many guys who just genuinely make Precious Achiuwa, right? You have guys who consistently make the wrong reads, who have the wrong attitude towards where they're supposed to be on the court. They don't do the right things without the basketball. So having someone who can teach Gary, like, okay, you're going to have to cut in this situation. You're going to have to relocate in this situation. You're going to have to set a screen in this situation in order to free yourself up. This will make him so much more lethal. He is a guy who can get it off the catch, but he's also a guy who can get it off the dribble and off the move. I think Gary Trent Jr. could be a 20-point per game scorer in his sleep. You don't just give that up when you're a team that's starved for scoring, that often struggled to, crack efficient scoring numbers and sometimes struggled to put up 100 points. You don't just give that up for nothing. Now, what does this mean for Fred VanVleet, Jakob, and the other guys that need to come back on this team? Well, in the short term, it means that the dreaded run it back scenario suddenly has a pathway forward that it didn't before. Because in most run it back scenarios, the guy that was often seen as the odd man out was Gary Trent Jr. And he was the odd man out because you literally couldn't even afford to pay him $10 million if you were going to give the other guys what they wanted, right? So it didn't really even make sense. It wasn't like, okay, well, if you can get Gary for 17, it'll work. But if you get him for 22, it's too much and you'll be over the cap. No, you actually couldn't afford him. The minute you traded for Jakob, the writing was on the wall that someone was going to leave. And that's why I think a lot of people were fairly critical of that trade, because it feels like, not only do you give up picks, not only do you worsen your draft position, but you're also kind of putting yourself into a bit of a logjam where you can't even afford to keep this core together. Well, now if Gary Trent Jr.'s cap hit this year is 18.5, and Jakob can come in for something on the lower end of his spectrum, and his spectrum is anywhere from 15 to 20. So let's say you get him for 15. And let's say Fred comes in for a little bit lower than expected. Well, now you have a complete pathway to not only be able to, especially if you waive Thaddeus Young and you don't use your mid-level exception, you actually can run it back. That would be a disastrous situation for the Raptors, and I certainly hope that that's not where they're thinking, because obviously long-term, this does mean that you're going to have to make a decision between OG or Pascal. And if reports are correct, they haven't really shown a willingness to want to move off of OG. I think there is a real, some real interest on both sides to make a deal work long-term between OG and the Toronto Raptors in, I believe, October, when he is extension eligible. So does this mean that Pascal is the guy out? Or does this mean that Fred is the guy out? Or will they run it back? If you are the doom and gloom Raptor fan, you probably believe you're committed the idea that this is all going to be terrible. They're going to run it back. Well, don't be so quick to make that assumption, right? I think this could still very easily be, Gary's getting traded. Very easily. I think this could still go that way. I also believe that the pathway to Fred VanVleet coming back isn't necessarily as easy as you think now. Because if Gary Trent Jr. is agreeing to an extension with you, I assure you there is at least some talk about what his role is going to be. Because whether he's not agreeing to like a 5-year extension or something, and he's just relegating himself to, okay, this is the type of player I'm going to be. This is still a guy who really believes in himself and still believes in his upside, and might be eyeing, a bigger contract when he's 27 years old, as these deals often do break themselves out to be. And if Fred VanVleet is back, there's no pathway to Gary Trent Jr. being a starter on this team. And don't even entertain the idea that they're going to just let Jakob walk after everything they gave up for him. So I think if anything, this lowers the odds of Fred VanVleet coming back by at least 5%. Generously, I think this lowers it by about 5%. Because if Scotty is a guard and OG, Pascal, and Jakob is your front court, well, then there's only one guy who can start next to Scotty, and I believe that ideally you would want that player to be Gary Trent Jr. I think we saw in the playoffs with Tyler Hero. Granted, Tyler Hero didn't play, but we saw it with Duncan Robinson. We saw it with Kevin Love. We saw it with Jamal Murray. We saw it with Nikola Jokic, if you believe that he's a negative defender, that you can hide one negative defender. Now, I don't think Gary's that negative. I think if put in the right position, I think he can be a slightly below neutral or at neutral defender. There is more than enough defensive talent across the board on this team to compensate for one neutral defender. Trust me, there's not another below average defender on this team. And I think, my hot take on Raptors Digest was that he was the worst defender on the team. And really what I should have said back then, and what I'll clarify now, is he was the worst starter on your team. If Gary Trent Jr. is your worst starter, well, guess what? There are like 20 other teams with a player in their starting lineup who is considerably worse than him as a defender. You're fine. You can still have a top 5 defense with Gary Trent Jr. starting. I'm convinced. If he ascends as a playmaker, I could really see this guy blossoming into a 25-5 type of guy, with like more efficient scoring splits, a 3-level scorer at 24, 25 years old. That is a hell of a commodity, and that's the type of guy who could get paid massive money on his next contract. So I think part of this is him betting on himself. I think part of this is also him betting on a new situation. If there is an extension signed, I think it should be favorable for the Raptors. I don't necessarily think that this changes too much in terms of what they're doing on draft night. To those of you who have been very firmly in the Grady Dick, Jordan Hawkins camp, maybe there's less of a pathway for one of those guys getting major minutes on a team now with Gary Trent Jr. Because I think a lot of us had just sort of written him off, right? I think a lot of people were just expecting next year to be, okay, you got to replace Gary's minutes. You got to replace Gary's role. And maybe now you don't have to. Reports are the Raptors are leaning in one of two directions, which is either a playmaking point guard, which is, Sayonara, Malachi Flynn, Delano Banton, Jeff Doughton, perhaps even Fred VanVleet. An off guard, combo guard who can play with Scotty in the backcourt, which means, there'll be a 6-man. Gary will start. Perhaps they will start and eventually Gary will move on, whatever. You never know how these things break out. Or they will go for an explosive forward of the likes that they have been previously attached to. Taylor Hendricks, Bilal Coulibaly, Cam Whitmore, players like this. I'm not saying Cam Whitmore is going to fall to 13, but someone like that. I don't think this drastically changes what you do on draft night. Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster have never struck me as the draft for need type anyway. But I think this adds all sorts of flexibility in terms of the draft night deals that you can do. Imagine a deal where you can package $18.5 million on his contract, $8 million on Chris Boucher's, $12 million on Chris Boucher's contract, and 8.5 or 8 on Thaddeus Young's contract. That's a max slot. That's a max player. So if Fred VanVleet's not coming back, you can now take back a max contract with those 3 players. Why would you do that? I don't know. Maybe you want a clear pathway for your 13th overall pick. Maybe you really believe in Jeff Doughton and Precious Achiuwa needing major minutes next year. Maybe you believe in, someone that you can target a mid-level exception. My point is, this is an asset that has come back, and it is a good thing. Now, the lines are open. If you would like to call in, I will leave, I want to say about 25 minutes for call-ins. I don't want to go on like a 2-hour conversation necessarily in this live, but if you got something to say, happily, I will take your calls, and you can check the link in the description below. I believe, please correct me if I'm wrong, there should be a link there for StreamYard. You can just call in. First-time callers are super welcome. It's always nice to talk to people for the first time. All right, let's get some comments. We got 161 comments. Wow. We got Coach Mo coming on. Coach Mo, what's going on, man?
I'm good. It was great news today. When I saw that, I was really happy.
Yeah,
and the first thing I thought of was the new coaching staff, the Jama coming back. I believe 100% if Nurse was back as coach, he's opting out. Because
you think so?
I think so.
I wonder if he would have opted in and then demanded a trade quietly, or there would have been an expectation there. I imagine that he and Gary Sr. are a little bit more optimistic about his long-term fit on this roster now.
Yeah.
But I sincerely don't think that his market was higher than 18.5. So he's, at this point, you got to ask yourself, does he believe he's a better player than he showed this year? I think he does. So there's no incentive to go and test the market right now when your stats haven't been great, you were a bench guy, your team struggled, missed the playoffs. Like, what benefit does he have right now? He's not going to get if he gets long-term security, it's going to be at a dollar amount that he doesn't necessarily agree with. And if he gets a short-term deal, I doubt it's going to be higher than the one that he just signed. It's almost like he just signed a 1-year contract. No?
Yeah. And it's like the end of the way the season ended for him, particularly in the team, left a sour taste. It's kind of like D'Angelo Russell. Like, it just ended badly. Jordan Poole, it just ended badly. And that's that bitter taste at the end. It just lasts the entire summer. So it is what it is.
No, I agree. And I mean, there's a bit of a recency bias. I mean, God damn it. Like, I was listening to like the Athletics pod with Sam Vecini, resident Scotty Barnes hater, Sam Vecini. I swear, like, I'm not trying to be rude with Sam. I've gone back and forth with him a couple times. He was asked to rank the 2021 NBA draft, and there was a consensus. It was a bit of a game. They said usually every draft in the first 14 picks, there's 4 all-NBA fringe stars. There's like 4 rotation guys. There's 3 guys that are out of the league, et cetera, et cetera. So he said, who are your 4 all-NBA fringe guys? So he immediately goes Cade, Evan Mobley. And I'm like, oh, shit. He's going to leave Scotty off this list, isn't he? And he did.
Who's the 4th guy? Franz and
Giddey.
Okay.
Franz and Giddey. And I was just like, okay. Now, to be fair to Sam, because I'm sure, he'll get wind of this somehow, and, maybe he'll be upset if I don't mention this. Yes, he did mention that if he could pick a 5th person, it would be Scotty, that he was, that the roles were draconian, that he didn't like that he was being limited to 4 guys. But my question then becomes, how are you putting Cade Cunningham over Scotty Barnes at this point? How are you putting Josh Giddey over Scotty Barnes? You can get me on Evan Mobley. You might even be able to sell me on Franz Wagner. I wouldn't agree with you, but I can understand how you arrive at that conclusion. But to put Scotty under Cade, a guy who hasn't been healthy for 2 years, who has, when he has been healthy, he's been inefficient, team hasn't really won. So what does this come down to? Well, it comes down to what was your last year like, right? And at this point, it's like playing through injuries has drastically impacted Scotty's stats so much that people kind of look at the growth. And so here's the question. If Scotty had come out in his first year and averaged 7 points per game, right, and not one rookie of the year, and then last year he put up 15 points per game, we'd probably feel a hell of a lot better about him, right? Most people would be like, oh my God, he got twice as good. Look at the trajectory. As a person who's obsessed with math and numbers, it drives me completely crazy how incorrectly people read numbers sometimes, and some of the biases that get baked into how people read numbers. And so because his production sort of flatlined, well, I mean, first of all, it's not common for a rookie to be anywhere near as impactful on winning as Scotty. I think if any player is picked in the draft on Thursday night and they put up his level of impact on winning, if Victor Wembanyama puts up his level of winning, like in terms of win shares, box response, etc., in his first year, I think most people would be like, that's cool. So that's like he gave you first overall pick type of upside on his first year contract, and a lot of people were like, he's 3 years away. So now he takes a bit of a jump back in his second year, and he's trying to add all these new things, and the team around him is struggling, and everyone's willing to write him off. And suddenly every offseason ranking has him so low, and it's just like, y'all think Raptors went all out for a bum? You think they went all out for a role player? Like, you think they held out on KD talks and starting to build around a role player? Like, you think Masai Ujiri is that bad at reading talent? So it's just recency bias. And it's the same thing with Fred and Gary.
And the guy that they're worshiping, Evan Mobley, right? The Lord of the 2021 draft, his playoffs, that was a stinker.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And they're quiet. They're not saying a word. That dude made zero impact. You could question if this guy's even a starter. If that's all you watched, you're like, this is the guy you're praising? This was the all defense? This is him?
Exactly. And I think, so much of numbers get lost, right? So for instance, with Gary, people are just going to look at the shooting percentage and they're going to look at the fact that he didn't start, and they're going to miss the context of how good he was around the rim. They're going to look at the improved playmaking chops because they didn't watch the games. It's like with Scotty. It's like you're going to look at the overall numbers and you're going to say, okay, he flatlined. He got worse than this, worse than that, worse than that. Shooting percentage down, 3-point shooting's down. 3-point volume was up. Mm-hmm. Complexity of 3-point attempts was up. He's doing completely different things. Defensive coverage was completely different on him. The ability to just take over whenever the fuck he wanted. I mean, God damn it. If I saw anything like that from Cade Cunningham or Josh Giddey, I would be like seriously dick riding with those dudes. Like, I'd be like, oh my God, they're going to be superstars. Because this is not normal. It's not normal for a 21-year-old to be able to do that.
They had simpler roles. They had
better players around. Like,
yes.
They had a better system around them. I don't want to say better players. They had better system around them. They had shooters, And I also think, like, a lot of these guys were on worse teams. The Orlando Magic was a worse team, Anyways, like, I'm not. I'm just saying
what it is.
Like, you got to watch the film on these guys. I spent a lot of yesterday watching some of these draft prospects, like full games, So I'm just trying to be as informed as humanly possible, because at some point I'm going to have to do a draft grades video, and I don't want to be given like a team a D for drafting Keyonte George at 11th. And then there's this whole game that I missed where he flashed all this shit that I didn't think he had and got injured. So I wanted to be really informed. And I'm watching these players play, and I'm watching them without the ball, kind of like what I did with the Raptors, last year, doing all my low light shit about what they're doing off the ball and stuff. And I'm just seeing like the difference in like how Anthony Black is just reading the game, like all the time. He's like doing the right thing. He's relocating, he's communicating, he's redirecting guys. And I'm just like, this is all the shit that impacts winning. Cason Wallace, just getting off the ball real quick on the inbound, moving it up the court, getting off the ball quickly, setting a screen. Just poking at the ball, man, like disrupting and doing all these great things on defense that don't show up. And I'm just like, my God, like Cason, Jordan Hawkins, Anthony Black, these guys are going to be winners at the next level. They're going to impact winning in a way that most rookies can't. And I don't know if Keyonte does that, but the numbers say something completely different. The numbers say this guy can't shoot, this guy can shoot. The numbers say this guy has volume, this guy doesn't have volume. My God. So it's just like, sometimes I just think we get too caught up in the wrong numbers. We don't contextualize them with actual film study, and I think that it backfires.
Yeah. Have you heard anything about the Blazers with the Raptors in that number 3 pick, and now it's going as far as Siakam and OG?
Oh, that's fucked up.
You don't think would you ever consider, like, if you want Scoot so bad, do you think Scoot is worth losing OG and Siakam?
Maybe.
Then why not just parlay those two to Charlotte and guarantee, if you want Scoot that bad, do you think?
Well, Charlotte this deal is not happening before draft night. This deal is not happening before draft night, because I'll tell you right now, the minute Scoot goes off the board at number 2 for Charlotte, the value of Portland's number 3 overall pick
Yes.
plummets.
I know.
I would be remiss. I might be cautious to say it doesn't plummet in half, but at least if it's like let's say it's like a value grade out of 100, right? So let's say on draft night that pick is worth like 90, right?
Mhm.
If Scoot is on the board, if Brandon Miller's on the board, I think it goes down to about 80, 82. It goes down so much because a lot of teams behind, whether it be Toronto, whether it be New Orleans, and what do Toronto and New Orleans have in common? Great front offices, David Griffin, Masai Ujiri. They understand talent. I mean, Victor Wembanyama himself has gone on the record multiple times and said Scoot Henderson is the second best player in this draft. He had a really great quote. He said, if I wasn't born, he would be the best player in this draft. Like he would be the number 1 pick in this draft. He wasn't trying to be braggadocious or an asshole about it. I think he was very humble, but he's paying praise because he played against him and he saw the dog in Scoot.
Yeah,
and I
no
think
fear.
Scoot has like straight up MVP upside, man. Like he's a really good player. He's very rarely do I say a prospect can't miss. There's like 7 or 8 guys in this draft where I'm like, at worst, they're going to be like really good starters for a long time. And you don't see drafts like this very often where there's like 8 guys. You're like, that guy's going to be started for 10 plus years. There's no chance.
So if Scoot is number 2, you have no interest in the Blazers pick, like 0.
I'm not going to say 0. There's always, there are players that I really like.
But what you're willing to give up goes down.
Absolutely, 100%. Like I don't think I would move OG. Again, I'm just so much lower on Brandon Miller than most people are. And I understand as like, I've developed a bit of a reputation as this nerdy stats guy. And people are like, how can you deny 12 box plus minus? Like the impact on winning. He was on a good team. He's a smooth shooter. He fits what the Raptors do. Just don't like him. And, there's prospects in this draft that I really do like. Prospects that I like, Jarris Walker, really like him. Cam Whitmore scares me. Emin Thompson, I can go either way, right? Bilal Coulibaly, I like him. But, the more I read about players, the more I listen to them talk, the more I watch film on them, my perspective shifts. There's small things that I observe in prospects, like how they communicate with their teammates, how they react to being scored on. Do they complain a lot to the refs? Are they isolated from their team? How do they react when they're on the bench and they get pulled out after a bad stretch of play? Are they talking to their coaches, or are they staring off, or are they like kind of like off in the distance, kind of ghosting everybody? I think these things kind of come back to how are you going to react when things don't go your way? Because there's no rookie in the world where everything went their way. You know what I mean? Anyways, I'm gonna bring on Christian and Fa as well. Let's just 3-way this conversation.
By the way, the Blazers want Bam. There's a report now that's saying the Blazers want Bam. So
Bam Adebayo.
Yeah.
Do you think Bam is more valuable than Pascal? I think yes.
That's not happening. I think that's a smoke.
Yeah, let's bring on Fa and Christian. Christian, how you doing?
I don't know what Lillard and Bam are going to do, but
hey guys,
I disagree with you, Rob. I think Pascal is more valuable to me than Bam.
I'd agree with that too.
I don't think he is. Bam was in the finals.
Y'all agree with that?
Bam's in the finals.
I think Bam is better than Pascal.
I think he's more valuable than Pascal. He's got more years on his contract, number 1. Number 2, he's a way better defender. And number 3, he's younger. He is way more valuable than Pascal. Pascal is an expiring contract at this point. If you trade him, the team that is taking him has no assurances that he will sign with them. He could be a free agent in 2024 and leave. You have to consider that diminishes his value as a trade asset. Same thing with OG. When they held on to these guys last summer, I was pissed because I was like, yo, you want to kick the can down the road because you're afraid to make the wrong decision. But every single time you delay this decision, the asset becomes weaker and weaker and weaker. Whereas last summer, you trade Pascal, you're trading 2-year contract. You probably get full value for that because the team will believe that they have 2 years to sell him on whatever situation you're trading him to. Now, you basically have to trade him. It's a little bit like the Bradley Beal thing, not quite like the Bradley Beal thing, but the team that's taking him has to have an assurance that he's actually going to stay because no one's trading him to move him. Like people are trading him with the expectation that he's going to stay long term. So you almost have to have a bit of a handshake agreement with his agent right now that he's going to stay long term in Portland if Portland is parting with the 3rd pick to get him. I mean, do people think about this? You imagine the PR disaster in Portland if you trade Scoot Henderson for Pascal Siakam. Pascal Siakam leaves in 1 year. Scoot Henderson becomes an all-star in year 2. My God. Like, they would go down as one of the worst trades in NBA history.
Yeah, but I think before you do that trade, right, Pascal has to agree to do an extension. If he doesn't do the extension, then you don't do that trade.
So why is Pascal doing us a favor?
He's not doing us a favor. He wants the bag. If he wants the $200 million, anything can happen.
He cannot get $200 million. You can get, well, I think 192 is the max.
Okay, yeah, 192.
So
if they offer him 192, then it takes it because he doesn't want to take the risk.
I don't know.
Sorry, I just can't get to
That's 192 over 5, right? Or 4?
Over 4.
4.
Whew.
Sorry, what'd you say, Christian?
I just can't get to the point where Bam is better than Pascal. Like, if you're looking
he's not better in any shape or form.
He is better.
How is he not better in any shape or form? Any shape? You acting like
he's only better defensively. But
replace Bam and Siakam. Where did the Heat go?
Sorry?
Replace Bam and Siakam. Where did the Heat go?
I think the Heat are worse.
Me too.
I don't think so.
Bro, their defense tanks. Are you kidding me?
Their
Right now, you're talking
like Bam is not an offensive talent at all.
Bro, like I'm gonna tell you the truth. Like around the trade deadline, when I was pretty sure that we were gonna move off of Siakam or at least try to, I asked a rival scout, like who does Eastern Conference scouting, and I said, rank these players: Jaren Jackson Jr., Bam Adebayo, Pascal Siakam. He said Jaren, Bam, 20 feet of space, Pascal Siakam.
Now that's not surprising.
I mean, but this isn't a biased person. This wasn't a guy who hates the Raptors, loves the Raptors. He was just a scout. Like, he is a professional scout. And I was just like, this is the element of age. Jaren is just younger. Bam's younger. You can say, like, I'm not a big Bam Adebayo fan. I certainly don't
put
think
Bam to be a number one option on any team in the NBA.
But that's irrelevant because neither one of these guys is a number one option.
Siakam isn't a number one option either.
But
exactly.
Nobody would want him to be one anyway.
My point is that he's not going to be as good as on defense as he is now because he's going to have to be used more energy on the offensive.
He will never take 20 shots because that's not in him. That's not in his game. He will never even try to be.
But if he's number one option, then he has to take 20 shots.
I think Bam has really, really natural playmaking ability.
I agree.
And Siakam is more of like forced playmaking. I think it came a long way this year, and I think it was a lot better. The defensive upside of both of these guys trying their hardest is not even close, in my opinion. Like, Bam is he is so versatile. He has so much of the rim protection stuff. You put Bam Adebayo on the Raptors this year, I honestly believe, like, with the addition of, like, it's almost addition by subtraction, because you take an offensive guy who hangs on to the ball so much into a connector type. You probably don't have to make the trade for Jakob because your paint defense isn't shit like it was last year. I mean, I think you guys have to be.
Guys are giving.
How many times has Bam Adebayo been to the NBA Finals as a second option on his team?
Jimmy didn't do it by himself.
Yeah, but
he really hasn't.
Pascal won the ring as a second option.
Exactly. Like, what are we trying to do here, guys?
Yeah, Pascal won the championship as a second option.
But he is not.
He was the second leading scorer.
Big difference. I agree with Coach Mo. Are you telling me Pascal Siakam was better than Kyle Lowry that year?
I'm not saying
with a straight.
Better.
Okay, so you're saying that Pascal Siakam as the third best player on the team, and that's being generous, in my opinion. Okay, because there's a lot to be said for analytics missing what Marc Gasol did. You don't get out of that Philly series without Marc Gasol at all. I believe you can probably try to make
Marc
it out.
Gasol's the MVP of that Philly series.
But you don't beat Golden State without Pascal.
I disagree. You could probably have had OG come back and replace a
OG
lot of what
never had
one.
Appendix first. You could replace him.
Huh?
32 points on the best defender in the world at that point. Like,
I think we can agree that the Golden State Warriors did not come into game one being like, yo, we really, really got to shut down this Pascal Siakam guy. Go watch those games and see how he scored.
And that was a 5-out offense.
Let me ask a question. Who's the best player?
How are you not coming to play in game one of the finals? That makes no sense.
I mean, y'all realize his true shooting percentage has dipped by like almost 10%, right? Like, since he's been asked to increase the volume. So you had a bet that this guy on 19 to 20% usage could keep some semblance of his efficiency as a playmaker and a scorer as you bumped up the usage and bubble year after year after. That's 3 years, 3 full years that you've given him with full control of the offense as the first option. And you have 2 playoff wins. 2.
And I'm telling you, it won't be any better if it was Bam in his place.
That's irrelevant. I'm not saying he carry you further as a first option. I'm saying he's a way, way, way better second option.
He would never have the mentality of a first option.
Exactly. So if both, you know what I mean? It's like
saying Draymond Green can't be a first option. He would never try to play like one.
You know what, Christian?
It doesn't make sense.
It's the same thing as
it's
the same thing as our Keyonte George debate, right? Keyonte versus Jordan Hawkins, right? And you say, well, Jordan can't, initiate an offense the way Keyonte can. I'm like, Keyonte can't. He can't initiate the offense the way Keyonte can. So at the end of the day, who's my better fourth option? Keyonte or Jordan Hawkins? You know what I mean? It just kind of comes down to that. If a guy can't play first option, then I don't give a fuck how he performs as first option. Do I really care how Malachi Flynn would do it as first option? Or do I just want him to be, a defensive-minded guy who does all the scrappy shit? Because if all you can do is be a really inefficient first option, no one's going to have you be a first option. There aren't a lot of teams in this league that would have had this level of patience with Pascal as a first option for 3 straight years.
So basically, you're blaming him because there's nobody on his team that's better than him. It's what you're doing.
Exactly.
No.
He actually has talent on his team.
Bro, he has, number one, he's not the best player on his team. He is
right now. He is right now. Scott is not there yet.
Okay. Future value, says Scotty. Current value, it's between him and OG. And analytic value, says Fred. So honestly, you want to present it because the raw numbers say, 25 points, 8 rebounds, 7 assists, and we're just used to seeing those numbers without any context of what 25 points per game means in today's NBA. Let me backtrack this for you. Let's go back 15 years. Now I tell you that a player is averaging 26 and 5. Are they being talked about the way that he's being talked about for 25, 8, and 7? Because I tell you, with inflation adjustment over what guys average this year. I mean, there was a point this year where 11 guys were averaging over 30 points per game. And you're telling me about 25 points per game on like really high usage where he had the ball all the time to do whatever the fuck he wanted. I mean, he could shoot 7 for 24 and no one was saying shit.
As he wanted.
And he's not doing too much for other people either. He's not setting screens. He's coasting on defense a lot. His defense fell off so much this year.
They're not organic numbers, manufactured.
He's a much better second option as I think a lot of people think of a second option like the same way we think of like D Wade as a second option. Like, could he be your first option if your real first option's off? I don't necessarily think that's necessarily where you want to go with that. I think more of the Scottie Pippen mold. Do you do all of the connective shit and some of the stuff that you need from a second option? Can you be a second point of attack? And for Pascal, so much of the speed that he played with in the championship run, the small stuff that he did, cutting without the basketball, that's just gone. Now, is that system-based? Possibly. I saw a little bit of it come back with Jakob. I saw a lot of encouraging signs where he was moving without the ball and, doing some of the small stuff that I really liked. I don't think Pascal's a bad player. But I also don't think that there are rival general managers out there that are lining to give up Bam Adebayo for Pascal Siakam. I think if 99% of NBA GMs had Bam Adebayo on their team and you offer them Pascal Siakam 1 year on his contract, I think Bam has 3 years left on his. Bam's younger. They keep Bam. So you can say he's better, but he's not more valuable. Just the same way that you can say, for instance, that you could say Klay Thompson right now is a better player than Scotty Barnes. Maybe you can get there. I don't think he's more valuable at all. Yeah,
numbers-wise.
Right? Exactly. So that's the point. So I think value and better than are being conflated here. I think you and FA are saying that Pascal is a better player, and you may have a case, and I get where you're coming from. But if defense matters, if age matters, contract matters, I think Bam's a better player.
I think Bam's higher IQ.
He is a higher IQ player.
I think he's a smarter player.
Yeah.
And I think he knows his limitations more. He doesn't try to do things he can't do. Pascal thinks he's Kawhi Leonard. That's half the problem, to me.
Like
Fred has delusions of grandeur. That's half the problem.
He's never been put in that situation. Is my point.
Who's never been put in that position?
Bam. Like he's never.
That's not true. That's not true. You whoa. You don't think Jimmy missed like a ton of games this year? Who
Yeah,
was their
but-
first option?
But they had Tyler Hero was the main guy, the main scoring punch there.
But Bam was still their best player. You're not telling me Tyler Hero is better than Bam too now, are you?
I'm not saying that, but he had folks that can score, right? Bam is
That
not
would be a
that
good
kind of
test. We should actually go back and check who had the higher usage during that time when Butler was out. That would be actually a good test to see who had the higher usage. And we should actually check how they did record-wise as well, too.
I don't think his play style changes that much according to who's on the court. He's still going to run the floor. He's still going to set screens.
Okay,
he's setting screens for undrafted guys. Like that guy has no ego. He's setting screens for undrafted guys.
Bam and Pascal, they're different type of players. Let's just agree and move on.
That's true. They're definitely different type of players. Like, because Bam, you can't even put Bam in that situation as a number one option because that's not his game. Like, I'm not saying that like Pascal being a number one option is ideal, but like that's
not
just
at
the
all.
situation. That's just the situation he's in because he's the best player on this team. Bam's not even like is he even maybe he's the second best after Larry? Like,
who's the number one option on the Pistons that won in 04?
Once again, I think we're just hammering into a wall here. I don't necessarily think Pascal is a much better player than OG Anunoby. I think you're kidding yourself if you think that that's true. I think they're very similar. I think if rival general managers had to pick between those two assets on your roster, who do you think they're picking?
Depends.
They're picking OG.
Depends on the team.
Who do you think Booker and KD would have taken instead of Beal, OG or Siakam? They'd say bring OG, bring OG.
Everyone wants to play with an OG Anunoby.
It depends on the team, right? Like Portland, for example, I think Pascal is a better option.
He is definitely not.
For Memphis,
I think Lillard would take OG because there's been rumors he wanted OG. There were rumors he wanted OG.
Yeah, but OG doesn't move the needle.
OG doesn't move the needle for what?
For Portland.
Have you
What the fuck?
Did you see
Yes, he
Gordon?
does. He would be their second best player.
OG's Aaron Gordon with a jump shot.
And some. I mean, honestly, like Aaron Gordon's defense in the playoffs notwithstanding, you put OG in a defensive series. I mean, he's incredible, man. What are we talking about here? Like I can't.
Like Rob,
like,
let me just say this.
I
remember
that OG would get traded just so we could see what you guys are seeing. Like I just want to see this so badly.
Let me put this into perspective for you. Here's on the career. Hang on, I'm going to share my screen just so everyone can see this. This is a career. Now, let me just put this in perspective. I believe that on a career value scale, the guy who's closer to his prime should have the higher numbers for sure. Bam's 25. We can argue that he's at his prime, approaching his prime, in his prime next year. I don't think we can debate that Pascal's been in his prime for a couple years now, okay? Let me show you something. Okay, let me show you this. Okay. So here's a head-to-head between Pascal and Bam Adebayo. Like numbers that stick out. So, for all the gaudy, Bam's such a terrible scorer, Pascal is this great scorer. Per 100 possessions, Bam Adebayo, 24.8. Pascal, 27.1. Really? That's the big difference? For all the Pascal's a better playmaker. Pascal Siakam, 5.6 assists. Bam, 5.8. What about the defense? Bam, 1.5 blocks, 1.7 steals. Pascal, 1.5 steals, 1 block. Okay. What about the analytics? As value over replacement goes, okay, despite playing way fewer games, okay, we're talking like almost 50 fewer games, Bam Adebayo has a value replacement on his career of 14.5, Pascal's 14.6. Almost virtually identical. Box plus minus 2.7 for Bam, 2 for Pascal. Defensive box plus minus 1.7 for Bam, 0.5. Box plus minus is on aggregated like average. So on an average year, Bam Adebayo is a 2.7 box plus minus, which means he is an all-star as an average from rookie till today. Okay? Like, that's crazy to me, man. Like, what are we talking about here? He's been a better player. Higher true shooting percentage, higher assist percentage, higher block percentage.
Roles. Like, they play two different type of roles.
That's not even true. That's not even true.
One option, the other one's like, what?
Bruh. You're talking number one option versus number two option, and I'm telling you the difference is 21.6% usage versus 23.7. Okay?
Pascal plays power forward. Bam is like their center, right?
Come on.
I'm defending Pascal because I want to be
fair.
They're
both point forwards, bro. Like, they're both point forwards. You can say Bam's a point center. He initiates the offense. Y'all watch the Miami Heat, right?
Hefe said that because the Heat might be listening.
Oh, you think the Heat are going to sway their decision, or teams are listening to Pensar basketball about like how great Pascal Siakam is?
Trade Bam anyways, we know that.
Bro, numbers don't lie. And
Bro,
the eye
like,
test don't lie. The
eye test really doesn't lie. You're talking about a guy who's 28, turning 29 this year. You're talking about a guy who's 25.
Clutch situations. Let's not talk about clutch situations.
Usage last year?
Just this year and last year.
Okay, let's take a look at Bam's career trajectory, and I will. But by the way, I will be very much in agreement here. If we're having this discussion 3 years ago, it's not even close for me.
Yes,
Bam has gone down. Okay, but Pascal hasn't exactly gone up either. Both of these players have flatlined. They both flatlined or went down. So for Bam,
I'm guessing they both
peak value was
their usage going up.
No, you would be somewhat like incorrect in that say. So Bam is at 25% usage. So you think that he's like some 20% usage guy, but his usage for the last 4 years has been higher than Pascal Siakam's championship year run. Okay. And Pascal Siakam, I'll look at his numbers right now as well, but just frame this as a point of reference. Okay. Value replacement, we already talked about it, is like almost borderline equal. He's had one fewer year in the NBA. Granted, whatever. He was a little bit younger. I mean, God damn it. Pascal Siakam came in as a senior. You can say he started basketball late. It's not like Bam Adebayo was some super duper duper hyped high school prospect and he was like the number 1 overall pick or something. He was a late lottery pick too. Okay. Yep. So, I mean, this is a guy that the Heat have developed. He's been more efficient. He's a much better defender. It is not even close. I will look at the crafted numbers for you as well, just to settle this debate once and for all.
Bam was definitely top 5 in that high school class, though.
Still, the question that matters is who impacts winning more. That's the number one.
Was Bam top 5 in his high school class?
That's the question. And Bam impacts winning more.
Yeah, I think he does too. Here, check this out. Pascal Siakam. Okay, we got Bam is a 25% usage guy, right? So let me ask you a question. Where do you think Pascal is going to be? 30?
Say just under, maybe. Yeah. So
okay. So his usage is 27. So what are we talking about here? We're talking 25% usage versus 27% usage. I have a feeling that people don't watch Miami Heat games. That's my feeling. And I'm not trying to call anyone out, but like if we're talking about material difference between, oh my God, this guy's like some second option who can't do anything with the ball. Bam does a lot of great stuff with the ball, man. And all those games that Jimmy Butler missed, I think you would be surprised. I think Bam's usage is higher than Tyler Hero's. It's close or
Bam
on par.
touches the ball a lot. Bam touches the ball a lot. The difference is he doesn't hold the ball as long. So
exactly
it feels like Pascal is higher usage because he holds it.
Was 30 during the Bam was 24. Somebody put it on the chat. You may want to confirm that.
What?
Tyler Hero's usage was 30 during when Butler was out and Bam was 24.
Sure, but on the season it's 25.6. So on the season, Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo both had the same usage. Bam more as a playmaker, Tyler more as a play finisher. Obviously, usage is going to be impacted by turnovers, shot attempts, etc. But assists.
But haven't we all agreed that Siakam would be a lot better player if he wasn't the highest usage player on the team?
Firmly. But you're seeing.
But Bam does more as a less usage guy. He's more valuable with less usage. He does more things.
I have seen Bam Adebayo be okay, I don't want to say superstar. I won't go there because someone just called Pascal Siakam and OG Anunoby superstars in my chat yesterday, and I nearly had an aneurysm for that. Bam has been an all-star at over 23% usage. So has Pascal. But I think Bam's 4.9, value of replacement, I believe it was, or box plus minus on that year, trumps anything that I've seen from Pascal. So I don't know.
Bam's a better defender, and Bam makes guys better. He sets better screens. He moves.
That's the other thing. Exactly. So what have we learned more than anything from Nikola Jokic? I hope one thing that we have firmly learned from Nikola Jokic is that, it's like that all that screening, quick read shit, like everything I complain about with Pascal is what Bam does so well. The defense, the rim protection, the screening, all that good shit.
The undrafted guys take a hit if Bam replaces Siakam. The undrafted guys take a big hit.
Yeah, and I mean honestly, like
Same here.
to be clear, I don't think that Bam and Scotty necessarily is a natural basketball fit either. So I don't necessarily think that's the greatest
That's
thing
the
in
thing.
the
Like
world.
Bam is like what? Bam's the center. Yeah, and like okay, I understand the screen setting.
I prefer not to
understand,
talk about a
like,
guy who brings the
look at
ball
the
up as
two
much as
body
he does
types.
as a center.
Of course, you want Bam. Of course, you want Bam to be, I guess, screening for other players more than Pascal. Look at the two body types. Who's getting?
Siakam doesn't set screens though. He could. He just doesn't.
He doesn't set.
But like,
He
if they
doesn't
both
set
did
good
set
screens.
Who would you think would set the better screen?
I mean, just because you
Like,
have the
without a
body to
chance,
set
like,
screens
obviously
doesn't
with
mean you
Bam.
always set screens. I mean, who would you think sets better screens, Pascal Siakam or Kyle Lowry?
I say Kyle Lowry. I wouldn't be surprised with that. Kyle Lowry, yeah.
And he's 6 feet tall. Why does he set better screens? Because he fucking knows how to, and he cares to. And because setting screens is the most selfless thing in the NBA because it's the thing that doesn't get you paid. It doesn't get you paid. There's like, I mean, yeah, teams chart it now. Teams chart it now, but previously, you never looked at a box. You never looked at a box score and be like, oh, this guy had a great game. He had 7 screen assists because they don't even fucking count it. But Steven Adams, it doesn't stop Steven Adams and Marc Gasol and players who generally play the right way from doing that. Kyle Lowry,
like it's like saying, of course, Pirtle's a better screener than Siakam's. Like kind of saying,
but you're kind of like you're missing the point.
He doesn't
like
care.
You're making it seem like Pascal is like some frigging MAGA dude who's like he's like 190 pounds or something. He's a 235 pound 6'10" guy. He can set screens if he fucking wanted to. He just doesn't. He doesn't do it. I mean, you can argue it's something that he hasn't been asked to do, but I've never really seen him do much of that. And you know, like,
you gotta look at Nick Nurse's scheme, right? You can only blame a player so much, right? It depends. Sometimes coaching plays a role.
I guarantee you, if Lowry was on this team, regardless of what Nick Nurse tells him to do, Lowry's setting screens.
Yeah,
you're not telling Lowry not to set screens. That's not happening. He's doing.
I think this is an argument that I heard, and I can't remember the channel that I heard it on, but someone was talking about it. Yeah, it was that crazy dude who does morning lives and shit, and that dude was just like, oh well, Nick Nurse was telling this guy to be selfish. Nick Nurse was telling this guy this was his role, and it's just like, bruh, if you told Scotty to go out there and freeze out all his teammates and not set screens for people and not make accurate passes, you think he's just going to do it? Like, you can't just control players like that. No, you are unlocking a player's natural instincts. There is always going to be a conversation with Pascal about how do you want to play. He's your superstar, right? He's your star. He's your All-NBA guy. He's your max guy. There's always going to be a conversation. And if at some point Pascal had said, you know what, I think I'm on the ball too much. I think I need to get off of it quicker. I think I need to do more shit off the ball to get myself free. I think I need to set screens for my teammates. I think it'll help them. I think it'll make our offense more dynamic. You think Nick Nurse is going to say no?
I need to let the game come to me more.
I take Fred. I don't take Fred VanVleet at face value when it comes to talking about himself, but when it comes to talking about other people, he's generally a little bit more honest than most. And one of the things he said several times this year, and Jakob has echoed it, Scotty has echoed it, Gary's echoed it, Pascal's echoed it. They've all said the same thing. Nick Nurse pretty much lets you do what you want on offense. It's a blessing. They always consider it a blessing because as long as you do what you want, what he wants you to on defense, that's the compromise. You do what I want you to do on defense, which helps us win. I let you do what you want to do on offense because I trust you. And that level of freedom being given to not great smart players like Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, and Marc Gasol is how you end up with an offense like last year. Now, if you give really smart players like Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, Scotty Barnes, Kyle Lowry, these types of players, freedom, Marc Gasol, Danny Green, the list goes on and on. If you give really well-coached players, Jordan Hawkins, Cason Wallace, Anthony Black, Scoot Henderson, Victor Wembanyama, God damn it, I'm talking about 19-year-olds, and I'm telling you, I watch these guys play. They're so well-coached, and they're not doing it because coach told me to set screens. They're doing it because somebody told them when they were 10 years old, this is how you play basketball, and they've never stopped doing it. These are instincts. I swear to God, these are just instincts. And the Raptors just have this idea that they can just bring in guys who don't really know how to play basketball and develop all their skills, but then never teach them how to actually play basketball. And, with OG Anunoby, when we do like low light films and all these film analysis breakdowns for him, no one has to tell him you need to relocate by 8 feet over just to give the guy a better angle. He just does it on instinct. These are just instincts. If you learn to play basketball the right way, if you had good coaching growing up, these are instincts that are bred into you through drills, through pickup, through coach stop. And I'm telling you, these things are just not present in Siakam. He got a lot of stuff, early on in his career through instincts, through athleticism, by being faster than guys. As those advantages fade, he's going to have to be a smarter player. He's going to have to learn to do all those things that he really hasn't been so great at. And I've never really seen a willingness to do it. But all of his skills just keep getting better. He keeps getting better off the, dribble. He's trying to like add new counters and shit.
Yep.
But none of this stuff really helps him be anything more than an incredibly inefficient isolation scorer or an incredibly limited playmaker. And like you can say it's like perfecting a vision, but it's like I can shine a piece of shit as much as I fucking want. It's still going to be a piece of shit. And I'm not trying to say like that is a derogatory thing towards Pascal Siakam, but if the end result of what he's going to be isn't a first option, then and everything you're working on is to make you a better first option, then you have an incomplete equation.
And then when he's finally a second option or a third option, he's not good at that.
Exactly, because people just assume that anyone can set screens. It's a talent. One of the biggest reasons why Pascal doesn't set screens? Because he can't do it. He literally can't. He gets so many fouls on this shit. It's the truth. You know why he doesn't like make quicker reads? Because he doesn't see it. He's surveying the floor, waiting for openings because he actually needs it. You know why he doesn't just attack off the catch? It's not because he doesn't want to. It's because he can't. He doesn't have the processing awareness to be able to see the game at the right speed. And you can literally watch it. And you slow down the game, you can see him trying to figure things out. And there are certain other players.
You can also put OG in that category too, right? So
absolutely, you can. And I'm a very big fan of OG.
We're talking about high IQ players. We don't have a lot of them. I understand that. But that is different from the talent that we're talking about right now.
Well, if you look, to me, this is incorrect development strategy. They believed when Kawhi left that they could just morph this guy into a first option when all of his skills leaned into second option. Now, if the Miami Heat, and Bam is not a super complete first option either. He lacks a consistent jump shot. He has a handle. I think most people will be surprised to see his handle in action. It is capable. He has passing ability, but he doesn't really have that go-to scorer mentality that Pascal had. I can't imagine a Bam Adebayo having a 52 points in Madison Square Garden type of game.
That's the thing. I can't imagine Bam like being put in the exact same scenario and being like two-time All-NBA player.
He is a two-time All-NBA though.
Okay. And I also can't imagine Chris Paul being the starting center for a team, but that doesn't diminish his value as a point guard. So consistently saying, I cannot imagine this guy occupying this role that he doesn't want to play, that he is never going to play on a winning team, and therefore this other guy who occupies that role is better. This is like saying that
and the guy who occupies that role,
this is like saying Devin Booker is a better player than Nikola Jokic because he's a better off the dribble shooter. Like, who cares? There's all this other shit that Nikola Jokic does that makes him way better. It's like saying, for instance, it's like the argument that people use to justify Joel Embiid winning the MVP over Nikola Jokic, right? Oh, he's a better rim protector. But what about all the other shit?
Hey, that's
right?
That's nonsense. But aren't we arguing like who would give Portland a better chance of winning necessarily?
I think Bam it would give them a way better chance of winning because number one, he doesn't need the ball to be super effective. You think he's getting the ball with Dame Lillard?
I think with if you get Bam,
who's setting better screens for Dame? Who's setting better screens for Dame?
Bingo.
What does Dame suck at? Defense. And what does Dame suck at? Defense.
Yeah,
but like Bam, all defense.
Bam, you have to trade Nurkic. Then you have to
Nurkic is dead weight to me. Like that dude should have been traded 2 years ago.
Easier plug and play type for that team.
But sometimes people just assume that you replicate isolation scoring across the board and you just have a successful team. And how many teams have failed using that exact same model? I swear to God, I remember Derrick Rose saying, they're saying we're a super team now. And it's like, bro, someone's got to set a screen for someone, and you not doing it for Amari, and Amari not doing it for Melo, and Melo's not doing it for anybody. So at the end of the day, someone has to be Chris Bosh. Okay, for this to work, someone. Pardon?
Nurkic is going to be the one setting the screens.
Nurkic can't even be on the court. Like he is so bad.
Nurkic can't guard anybody.
He is such an awful player in the NBA. Like I'm not even like I've had a bit of a I understand he's very talented, like super talented player. And I understand he's a big dude and he can set some screens. But the way that guy sells on defense, you have to put so much around him. He's not worth it. And he occupies space that you need for driving lanes. If you have Pascal Siakam in there, you definitely don't want a big center clogging up the paint like that. I would move him in a heartbeat, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're packaging him with that third pick to get out of that contract. Now, the concept of Bam Adebayo and Dame Lillard, is that not a miniature version of Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic? Like, did we not just see this fucking thing work? Like, did we not just watch a team unlock with a playmaking center who sets great screens, who can unlock two-man action, who has quick reads, short roll, all the shit that causes winning is what Bam Adebayo does. Now, I hate the fact that I'm the pro Bam guy, because I'm not a pro Bam guy. I don't like Bam Adebayo. I don't like him. If I was a general manager and he was my max player, I would cry.
I hate the fact that I'm a pro Pascal guy here because I want him to trade him, but I want to be fair to him too.
But let's keep it a buck though. For real, like I understand that some of us would be okay moving Pascal. I'm kind of like neutral. I don't care. He can come, he can stay.
I'm actually excited to see Pascal with this new coaching staff.
Me too. I'm excited to see Darko Rakovic hold him accountable and put him in better positions to score. Yo, one of the worst things about Pascal last year was I felt bad for him too. He's being put in all these situations where he's got to have these tough shots and these terrible, terrible sets where he's got to get everything. He's exhausted. He's overexerting himself. He's playing over 40 minutes. I mean, my God, I would have to hate the guy to root for him to have another season like that. So I don't hate him. And if he comes back, I suspect he'll be better. I really do. I suspect he'll be better. I don't know what that means in terms of, oh my God, is he going to get paid a max? Because my only beef with Pascal at this point, long-term, is number one, doesn't fit so well with Scotty. Number two, I think he's going to decline hard when the athleticism slows down, because all of the advantages that he's generating over guys, you can read it like a book. Why does he start seasons so much better than he finishes them? We've seen it so many times. Tell me why it happens every fucking time.
And the only time he ended it well was when he started late.
Exactly. Which was last year. Yes. And I mean, even then you could argue like he started it so bad. Yeah. Like he was so bad for those first 10 games when he came back from injury, and then it was like back to normal. But you see how much better he was in the first month of last year than he was in the last month of last year. And you say, why is it? Well, fresh legs.
It's the same reason why he starts the game well and he doesn't end the game well.
Exactly, because your legs get tired, and then eventually you're gonna have to throw around weight that you don't have. You're gonna have to use skills that you don't have. You're gonna have to exploit. Space with a handle that's not quite tight enough. Although I will argue, among guys who are about 6'10", his handle is fucking phenomenal.
He's better than Jalen Brown.
For sure. Yeah. Like honestly, earlier last year, I was like firmly Jalen Brown is way better than Pascal. Watching Jalen Brown a lot last year, I'm kind of like
to save his life.
Either
Jalen Brown can't make reads to save his life.
I mean, I don't know about can't make threes to save his life. I think more or less like he's just so turnover. Did you watch that last game? I'm not gonna base everything on one game, bro. Like, all I'm saying is this. I also watched him be the Celtics' best player in the finals last year.
My point is this with Jalen Brown. There's all this talk about he wants to be the number one. You had your opportunity.
Facts. Yeah.
You had it. Everything you wanted, everything you ever wanted was right there for you.
True.
And you shit the bed.
True.
I don't want to hear number one option from you ever again. I don't.
I think his playmaking is limited. I think his handle is limited. I think his basketball IQ. Jalen Brown is another example of a guy who has all the athletic gifts, all the skills.
The proverbial
bag, the eye test, everything. And if you just watch him for a couple plays, you'd be like, how's this guy not a top 5 player? But I tell you over and over again, mentally.
Just takes tough shots.
Doesn't see things. Doesn't do a lot of the stuff off the ball that you need. Sometimes over dribbles. Doesn't exactly. And he so often will miss, like Rob Williams under the basket. And I'm just like, man, I'm not. And again, Jalen Brown versus Pascal Siakam. What is the debate? Jalen's a little bit younger. That's it. That's the debate. He's just a little bit younger.
But again, Siakam never separated himself.
Yeah, and I mean, like, both of these guys are having very similar careers in a lot of ways. They have a glaring skill that hasn't developed. With Pascal, it's his outside shooting. With Jalen, it's his really like passing, dribbling, playmaking. And they both have started out as great defenders, and now they've regressed to mediocre. And in the case of Jaylen Brown, like, bro, this guy just does not care. Like, fucking checked out defensively. Off ball awareness is fucking terrible. Doesn't stay with this guy. And I'm just like, you're so athletic. How are you not guarding? And there's just like a lack of buy-in there.
Yeah,
I think
he's a
Ime
physical
Udoka got the best out of him for sure. And I think people were really high on him the previous year, but this year was a bit of a letdown for me. And that's sort of disappointing, because he's heading into a contract season. And now he's got the All-NBA thing. So to be honest, like, now I lean Pascal because I'm not paying Jaylen Brown $60 million a year.
I think Pascal has higher IQ too. I think Pascal has higher IQ.
It's close. It's close. I think Pascal reads the game a little bit better. I think he reads the game a little bit better. Also, Jaylen Brown does play with a lot more talent, and he's also like playing with Jason.
By the way, Rob, random question: What do you think Darko is like going to be like with the minutes distribution?
I think expect guys to be closer to 34, 35 minutes as opposed to 38, 39. I mean, I expect maybe he'll go 9 deep to 10 deep on a nightly basis, and he'll develop that bench. But granted, he'll have 3 new pieces to develop on the bench if everyone comes back. And I'm not saying everyone's going to come back, but he's going to have Otto. That's technically a new piece because he didn't have him before. He might have a new signing, and he'll have the 13th overall pick. All of these are expected to be rotation pieces, and you'll be replacing someone like Thaddeus Young, who is likely to be waived. I don't see how you can be worse if you run it back. You almost certainly will be better. And what's better than 41 wins? Playoff team. So I can see the appeal from the Raptors side. I just hope that they also see that there are consequences to holding on to Fred VanVleet and Pascal Siakam beyond the age of 30. And, potentially, them slowing down could be a cliff. Like, people think it's a valley. People think it's a slope. I think it could be a cliff for either one of these guys. And I'm not saying that these guys, like Fred, I think has always out-earned his contract from rookie to now. He's never been overpaid, ever. For me, Fred VanVleet has never been overpaid. He has always been criminally underpaid, especially early on. So if he feels like, bro, I've given y'all 7 years of value at a discount, you owe me 3 years of a slight. Well, they're not giving him a legacy contract where he's like three times.
That's what that
right?
is. What you're saying, that's what that is.
Well, I mean, I think this is more like a Kyle Lowry situation as opposed to Kobe Bryant situation.
This reminds me a lot of like, was it 2018 with Lowry?
2017, I believe. 2017 or 2018. No, it wasn't 2018 because then 2018 was when they had.
But again, Lowry made like 5-6 consecutive All-Star games.
That's fair.
What are we talking about here?
But he also had a start. He also got the starting job like a little bit sooner than Fred. He also came into the league a little bit younger than Fred, and he's also better than Fred.
He still beat up Jose.
I mean, in fairness, Lowry was getting $30 million right back then. You know what $30 million would be now? $42 million. So if Fred's getting $30 million now, it's not like Kyle getting $30 million.
But Lowry resurrected this franchise.
I think DeMar and Kyle
Fred tried
and
to break it down.
I get all the narrative stuff, but I'm just saying straight up from the perspective of retaining the asset. If he comes back on a 3-year deal, I'm okay with 3 years, 90.
What are you guys' thoughts on what's his name? Jakob saying that he doesn't want to play for a rebuilding team.
Did he say that? Where did he say that?
There's a quote. There's a quote that he says that he doesn't want to play for a rebuilding team.
I mean, he's been on the Spurs for how many years now?
I think that probably has to do with it, probably.
Yeah.
But like,
I understand that sentiment, and I'm happy to hear it. I mean, would I want to hear that a player wants to be on a team that loses 20 games next year? I don't think so.
We're going to be better next year. We're going to win more than 41 games.
I mean, look, Jakob Poeltl is a free agent. He doesn't have too many suitors. The teams that have cap space don't necessarily have a pathway to bring him back. I mean, would he go back to San Antonio with Victor Wembanyama? Like, can you imagine, San Antonio next year with Jakob and Fred? With Victor Wembanyama, Devin Vassell, and everyone that they have there.
And our first-round pick next year.
Keldon Johnson.
And our pick. And our pick.
And our pick next year.
They're not contending, but they're right under there.
I mean, Victor is not a 5. and you were definitely not playing him at the 5. So he's going to be a 7'5" 4 guy. Good luck, Pascal Siakam, trying to score on that dude.
The reason I mentioned that is like I'm guessing that says, like, to me that says the direction, doesn't it?
Well, I don't think the Raptors were going to rebuild anyway. I think it was either going to be we're going to try to be a play-in team with a younger roster around Scotty and possibly around OG. I mean, how bad do you think they're going to be if Fred leaves? You think it I mean,
to me, it's a domino effect. Like if Fred, like when people talk about like I guess going young and like building around Scotty, that to me is like Fred's gone, Siakam's gone, and they're probably gone. Fred's probably walks, Siakam's probably gone for like picks and a role player, and like I don't know. You think they could still be a playing team? I don't see it.
I think this is a team that drastically underperformed last year. So everyone setting the benchmark of 41 wins might be sorely disappointed to find out that I genuinely believe this was a 50-win team that played like a 41-win team last year.
That's why I understand.
So let's just say we're both right. Let's say this is a 50-win team. How many wins does Otto add? I think he adds 3 if he's healthy, 3 to 5. Okay. How many wins do you lose by losing Thaddeus Young? I think you lose 1. So we are right now, just like from the perspective of if everyone comes back and just Otto comes back, you're already at like 54, right? Let's just say Darko is the magic cure. Now you lose Pascal. I think that's about 5 wins. Now some people might think that's crazy, Rob. How can Pascal and Otto have almost identical, impact on winning? Well, that's just how basketball fucking works. Okay, like you have an isolation score, you replace him with an isolation.
We lost to 25 guys.
Exactly. I mean, if anyone's fucking confused about this, go watch Coach Carter. I hate to reference Samuel L. Jackson in a moment like this where I'm so panicked, but honestly, what was that fucking quote from Coach Carter? Yo, bro, those were our 2 leading scorers. And what do you say? We're going to have 2 new leading scorers next year. That's exactly how this works, right? Pascal is not some beacon of efficiency where it's like Kevin Durant, where it's like, oh my God, how the fuck are we going to get isolation scoring at 61% true shooting? No, this is a very replaceable offensive player.
How much worse were the Cavs when Kyrie left? They still went to the finals. And that's a guy who all he does is score. No intangibles, no leadership, no locker room stuff. It's just literally a number.
It's you got to look at someone like Mikal Bridges, right? Mikal Bridges is a great example. Someone who's kind of like a third option in Phoenix, and then he comes to not New Jersey. My God, my childhood, Brooklyn, and suddenly he's a 25-point per game scorer, and he was more efficient than Pascal. So what the fuck are we talking about? Like, this is not like there are no shortage of guys. I just want to put this out there. There's so much scoring talent in the NBA. Whether you're talking like guys that don't even play right now, that could probably average 23 to 25 points per game.
Continue with what you're saying. Well, yeah, so Pascal's 5. How much is Fred?
Okay, I think Fred's about 6 or 7, maybe 8, like 6, 7. Like he impacts winning big time. He does so many smart things on the ball, off the ball. He's got like the shooting, spacing, which opens up driving lanes for other guys. He spaces for other people. He digs on the ball. So let's just say he's 6.
13 losses right there.
How are we getting to 13 losses?
We got 5 for Pascal, 5 for Otto, 6 for.
No, you're not losing Otto. You're getting Otto back. So Otto, Pascal almost cancels each other out. But let's just say 3 for Otto, assuming that he'll play fewer minutes, because he had 5 win shares in Golden State, but that's when he played 66 games or 60 games. I don't think it's necessarily reasonable to expect someone who's been injured as often as he has over the last 6 years to play 60 games. So let's just say he plays 40 games. But when he plays, I tell you, per minute, he impacts winning more than Pascal Siakam. Some people think that's crazy, but he definitely does. Go watch the games he actually played, because a lot of his games were without Pascal. Go watch how he impacted winning. I mean, this is a guy who was coming back from injury at that point. He was just getting into the flow of things. And I swear to God, there's so many games where I watched with Otto. Granted, the strength of opposition at the time was not so great, where it's like the side of the court that he was on defense, teams didn't score on that side of the court because he just does so many fucking smart things. He's one of my favorite players in the league for a reason. He does so many things that help you win. So let's just say he impacts winning by 3. So let's just say the loss on Pascal is 2 and the loss on Fred is 6. So you lose 8. Now, let's say that a full year of Jakob is 2, because we can agree that Jakob Poeltl fully integrated into this offense is going to impact winning more than, Christian Koloko or whoever. Let's say that's 2. I don't know where we're at math-wise, but I'm finding us in the play-in, because if Gary improves a little bit, Scotty improves a little bit, and I think Scotty can be way better. I think Precious can be way better. I think OG can be better. So I think all of these guys, this internal growth factor, I think we're having this idea where like, how can you lose two guys? Replace them with younger, cheaper options.
We sacrificed
and be
everybody
kind of the
for Fred
same.
and Siakam. We sacrificed everything for Fred and Siakam.
Right. It's like how much
literally that's what we did.
Like what is the like consider like fuck a season, fuck a game. Think about it on a per possession basis. What is the consequence of not putting the ball in a playmaking situation in Scotty's hand in the short roll as opposed to running the ball through, a Fred and Pascal pick and roll or a Fred and Jakob pick and roll? Well, the downside is Fred is a worse finisher than Scotty in the paint. He's a worse passer. He's not quite as quick on the reads, and he's not quite as accurate on the passes.
And he's not getting doubled.
If Scotty handling the ball a little bit more makes all of your shooters 2 to 3% more effective, I suddenly see his win shares going up from like 5-ish, which is where they've been for his rookie and sophomore season, to about 7 to 8-ish. So suddenly you're making up 3 wins right there. What's the 13th overall pick going to be? Maybe one win versus, whatever the hell he's replacing, but be that Malachi Flynn or whoever he's
Jakob out of the relations as well, though. If Pascal and Fred are gone, I don't think he resigns here.
I think he still could. I think he has a really good relationship with Scotty, and if they assure him that the direction is winning, and they compensate him a little bit more, let's just say like they bend a little bit on the money and they say, okay, we were going to give you 17, but now we're losing Siakam and we're losing Fred and we desperately need to keep you. So we're going to pay you 20, but we're going to give you maybe a partial guarantee on that third year as opposed to, fully guaranteed third year.
Got to give him 20. And that's
okay. So in this case, I'm sorry, but like how bad do you expect a team of Fred? No, fuck Fred. How bad do you expect the following team to be? Scotty, Gary,
OG.
Precious, OG, and Jakob, with Darko Rajakovic coaching them, with Otto Porter coming off the bench, Precious a little bit back, young guys developing 13th overall pick, and the full mid-level.
Morale sky high.
Plus, by the way, everything you got back from the trade for Pascal, be that maybe that's another starter. Maybe that's the guy who starts over, and I mean, like shit, like imagine the following team. I'm gonna give you a team that really might excite you. Imagine the following team: Scotty at point, Anthony Simons at 2, Gary at 3, OG at 4, Jakob at 5, with Precious off the bench, Otto off the bench, 13th overall pick off the bench. Hold on, what about Scoot Henderson in this case? Because if you're trading Siakam for Anthony Simons on the 3. Right? Maybe you get off the 13th, and in that trade, you sweeten it. You give up the 13th pick to move up to 3, and then you make the exchange for Pascal and Anthony Simons. Well, now you have replaced a non-shooter with a dynamic and incredible shooter. You will, maybe you start instead of Anthony Simons, maybe Scoot comes off the bench in this case. How are you less than a 38-win team here? And how is 38 wins so different than 41-win team last year? Like, I'm just not seeing how you can be bad with Jakob Poeltl, OG Anunoby, and Scotty Barnes in your team. I don't understand how you can't bottom out. You can't be a 30-win team with those 3 guys on your team. They impact winning too much. Those guys.
See, to me, I don't want to be a 38-win team or a 41-win team personally.
Fair enough, but if the 2 options that you have are 47 wins with 2 guys leading the way who are approaching 30, you're capped out, maxed, and your young talent is basically Scotty Barnes, and that's it, and the 13th overall pick, versus, and I say that's 48 wins, versus 38 wins, and you got Scoot, Scotty, OG as your young core pieces. Like, I'll take 38 wins with massive upside and growth development, because I can see how that team could actually make a conference finals in a couple of years. I don't see how a team with, especially in the ascending East, with honestly, I think if Boston keeps it together, I think they're going to be a problem. And James Harden reportedly wanting to go back to Philly, they're going to be a problem for at least a couple of years too. So I just don't know what you're supposed to be aiming for other than the middle if Fred and Pascal is your end game. And I also think that it kind of puts the ball out of Scotty's hands. And I don't know necessarily if those guys are willing to defer to Scotty. And so, we can agree or disagree whether Scotty is the guy or he's supposed to be the guy. Obviously, it built this entire channel on the premise that he is. But if he's not, then you have no future at all.
To me,
but at least we'll know he's not the guy. At least we'll know that. We'll have.
I would like to see it. I would like to see it.
Scotty's the guy Like it's so obvious Scotty's the guy going
Sure.
forward.
So if you're building around him, if you could build a team from scratch around Scotty Barnes, you putting Pascal Siakam and Fred VanVleet on that team?
But that's
for
not
real?
We're not building a team from scratch though. We're not in
But
that.
but let's assume we are. Let's assume that Pascal being on the trade market is actually an opportunity to do something for your roster. Let's assume that Fred VanVleet potentially being he is a free agent right now, and just perhaps letting him walk or getting a sign and trade is an option. I think sometimes you just need to clear someone out of the way.
Take 47 wins over 38. Doesn't matter.
I wouldn't.
Like
I
to
wouldn't.
me, it's like okay. Do you think Scotty's ever going to be better than Jimmy Butler? A better
Yes.
player overall.
Yes.
You think he'll be that within the next 2 years?
No.
You don't think? I think you can make that jump within the next 2 years, but
2 years, Jimmy Butler, bro. Jimmy Butler last year, despite the criminal underrating, from a analytics perspective, was a top 7 player in the NBA. If you think Scotty's going to be a top 7 player in the NBA by year 4, that's a jump that I don't think he can take.
well,
I'm watching his workouts.
It's more so by year 5.
I don't know. Maybe by year by age 24, 25, he's touching that level. And I think with Scotty, so much of it is going to be just his impact on winning, right? Like maybe the numbers will never be like 32 points per game or some crazy shit like that, but it could be, man. Like this guy can do whatever the fuck he wants with his career. He'll be as good as he wants to be. There's really no limitations there. This is always, yeah. Like, I mean, like the numbers that I saw in Josh Giddey, the growth that I saw in the feel, the playmaking chops of a Franz Wagner, everything is so polished. Cade's so polished. Jalen Green's pretty polished. And I put Scotty over all of these guys. Why? Because they all have a limitation. They all have something where it's like that thing is something they're never going to overcome. They're either too small, too slow, too unathletic, too this, too that. Their shots broken, this or that. The Scotty is literally like to a coach that understands how to develop. Which I mean, the Raptors, in fairness to their credit, they have put in 2 coaches who really know how to develop. I mean, really, there's nothing stopping him from being an MVP. Nothing. And I don't see Franz, Cade, or Josh Giddey having that level of upside. Granted, I think Josh Giddey's further along at this stage than Steve Nash was, and Steve Nash won 2 MVPs, so the fuck do I know? Maybe he could be. I mean, I just think that the defense of Scotty...
the new coach hire was pretty much giving the keys to Scotty, because that was just never going to happen under Nurse. Like, he has this, I don't know, I guess the way he feels towards Fred and Siakam. Like, he was just never going to put Scotty above those guys.
Okay, well, if I can think of, Scotty's such a versatile player, I could seriously see him like with so many different types of players. I could see him thriving with a Victor Wembanyama type. Now, a Victor Wembanyama type is a bit of a misnomer because he's a one of one, but you get my point. Like a guy who can shoot, a guy who can dribble the ball a little bit, space out. Kristaps Porzingis. Okay, I could see him thriving with a guy like that. I could also see him thriving with a guy like Devin Booker, a secondary creator, occasional primary creator who can do a lot of interesting things off the ball. I could see him thriving with a Desmond Bane. I could see him thriving with a Ja Morant. I could see him thriving with all sorts of types of players. I could even see him. There's really one type of player that I can't see him thriving with. It's Pascal Siakam. It's basically a complete redundancy of all the shit that he does and all the places he wants to occupy on the court. And it's like the dynamic interplay between these 2 players. Like Scotty either needs to be a screener for a shooter, or he needs to be the downhill guy, and he needs a screener to work with him. So even Jakob Poeltl, despite all of the, neither guy can shoot crap, seems to be a more natural fit with the Scotty as a pick and roll ball handler than Siakam. With Siakam and Scotty, you're basically replicating shit. And it's so weird because on draft night, Kendrick Perkins' first reaction to Scotty Barnes being picked was, let's just pour out a drink for Pascal Siakam. This is curtains for Pascal Siakam in Toronto. And I think at the time was just like, nah, it can work. And the more I've seen it, the more I've realized I don't think it can. I don't think it has like a great deal of like, and people always point to the numbers and they'll say, look, Scotty's better with Fred on the court. Scotty had good stretches with Pascal on the court or whatever. But it doesn't matter because we haven't seen Scotty with Devin Booker. We haven't seen Scotty with Mikal Bridges. We haven't seen Scotty with Scoot Henderson, Victor Wembanyama. We haven't seen him with all these other types of players. And I just think just from the eye test of seeing what he likes to do on the court and where he likes to operate and where he wants the ball and where his strengths and weaknesses are and how he gets his game going. So often those games where he was really going were games where Pascal Siakam was doing something different than he usually does, where that was the game where Pascal took like a lot of threes, or that was the game that Pascal didn't play, or that was, you know what I mean? Like it just feels.
I think 2019 Pascal could fit with Scotty easily.
Yes, because 2019 Pascal was basically a corner spacer and a transition player. But is Pascal Siakam A, willing to, B, capable of going back to that role? I don't think so, because so much of his gazelle-like energy, like, you know, people used to say, like, this guy never runs out of energy. Like, you see him in minute 1, you see him in minute 38, he looks like he's fresh. That hasn't really been the case. I mean, he was a toolsy defensive guy. There were some very smart people who were comparing him to a Scottie Pippen. Maybe he could ascend as a secondary playmaker, etc. But now I'm just seeing more of a progression towards, I want to be a creator. I want to be the guy with the ball in my hands. I don't want to do all this other stuff. And that's where someone has to now do that. So your reluctance to do shit puts the onus on other people, because look, basketball is never going to work without screens. It's never going to work without cuts. It's never going to work without guys filling the lane. It's never going to work without guys making the extra pass. All of these things have to be present in your offense. Who does it is anyone's fucking business. It's kind of like how I tell my girlfriend, it's like, you don't manage your money, you're putting the onus on me to extra manage my money. You know what I mean? It works like a team. You know, there's interplay here. So anything you refuse to do, if you refuse to rotate, now your teammate has to rotate. Everything works on a string. And I think that this is so great because Darko preaches this, right? It's like anything that you don't do, like your unwillingness to do this is going to impact your team down the line. Pascal's unwillingness to rotate and defend the rim better than he did resulted in some historically atrocious rim defense for this team last year. It resulted in terrible defensive analytics for the Raptors lineups featuring Pascal as the rover. That role that he had so, you know, and so physically capable of playing. And so it's almost like he's built to play that role. You know, the guy who scrambles out to the corner, guy who can protect the rim, guy who can block shots, guy who can quickly switch out to point guards, etc. You know, and he has so many tools, but so often this past year, either due to his offensive load or due to perhaps, you know, turning 28, 29 years old, like you do slow down. And when these athletic gifts start to go, as I mentioned before, you're going to have to lean more and more into skill and IQ. And I don't see it. I just don't see the pathway forward.
And I think that's what this year's about, right? I think we're going to try to see if Pascal can get back to playing some like version of that role. And if he can't, then he's probably gone by like...
Let's say he could do it for 1 year. You think he can do it for the next 4 years? You think at 33 years old, Pascal Siakam sprinting the court, doing backcourt cuts, beating his man down the floor in the league that is increasingly getting bigger, stronger, faster across the board. Look at the prospects that are coming in this year. Jarris Walker, Cam Whitmore. Like, these are huge guys.
I don't think Pascal really has an ego like that. Like I said, like I've always said, he's the type of guy that just goes with the flow. I agree with that. If he does this year and they're successful, they win 50 games and make it to second round, maybe challenge the second round team to 7 games.
But the assumption here is that he can do it. You're making it seem like it's a given that he can still do this. You're making it seem like it's a given that he can still defend at the level he used to defend at, run the floor at the level he used to, shoot at the level he used to. I'm not sure he can.
Yeah.
I don't know. To me, if he's done it in the past, I don't see why he can't do it again, unless it's just like physically he can't do it.
Well, I mean, I always look, whenever I look at a college prospect or an NBA prospect, I always look at how do you generate space? That's all I care about. Really, at the end of the day, this is why you and I are so fundamentally far apart on Keyonte George too. Not to bring up Keyonte George like every 5 to 10 minutes like clockwork, but I do. I have dreams about the guy, you know, getting picked on Raptors draft night. Huh?
You have nightmares.
Nightmares, absolutely. They are terrible nightmares. And like the one thing that I'm just always on is like, how do you create the space to get your game off? Is it through excessive dribbling? Is it like Jordan Hawkins, like where you're creating space just through relentless motion and movement and system and your the quickness of your jump shot, like how quickly Jordan Hawkins gets that shot off? That's space, because you're closing space and generating space. So with Pascal, the space was always, he's just too quick. There wasn't a lot of 4s or 5s who could stay with him. If you play him at the 5, he's going to beat the guy down the court. He's going to get shots in transition. He was crafty. He had this like little spin move. It was a little bit weird. He had a herky-jerky way of moving. It was really off rhythm for defenders. Like when you're a defender, you get used to a way that a guy plays. And you play basketball, right? Like you get used to a way a guy moves. And when some guy, comes at you and you haven't played him before a couple of times, and he moves completely different, like Pascal Siakam, he has a sort of like herky-jerky way of moving, it throws you off as a defender, I think. So once teams catch up, once the quickness that you had goes away a little bit, like I still think that Pascal's quicker than most 4s, but I think that is just going to be, it's diminishing. No matter how well he holds this up, it's always going to diminish. So at some point, your game has to go from quickness to power. Michael Jordan did it. Michael Jordan is a way better athlete than Pascal Siakam ever was. But even Jordan knew that the player he was at 24, that midi turnaround post-game shit that he added that progressed him through his 30s, fundamentally different player. People remember Jordan as one of two things, either the guy walking through the air when he was 22 or the guy hitting post turnarounds over Jeff Hornacek when he was 36, or like maybe even the guy in the Washington Wizards. But there's a reason why Michael Jordan progressed and changed, throughout his. Look at Vince Carter. Vince Carter, the guy who attacked the rim every single time when he was a rookie or a sophomore, and by the end of it, he was just a jump shooter. He was a jump shooter because he developed that, because that's how you age well, right? He was a smart player. He moved off the ball. He does all this stuff. So it's like for Pascal, at some point, in order to age gracefully into his 30s, what I was looking for was a post game, some added weight, higher IQ, and some shooting, like elite shooting. Those are the only ways that a guy like this ages well into his 30s, because his space generation just going to go. Right, I think Barnes
is a better post player right now.
I think Barnes and OG are better post players.
I agree with that.
So this is where, and so, okay, you have Jakob on the team. You have Barnes and OG who could beast in the post on a mismatch, and you have Pascal Siakam who can't space for them. Because teams are going to live with Pascal Siakam shooting threes until he can prove that he can hit them at 38%. No one is guarding a 35% three-point shooter, and he was 32, 33 last year. So he needs to get himself up to he's a fucking bucket from out there, like Karl Anthony Towns. He has to get to that, maybe not that high, but he needs to get close. So he needs to go, he needs to take 37% Pascal from the championship year and up that. And he's gone down by 4%. So it's like at this point, putting the ball in his hands is the only option. And that's at the cost of Scotty and OG. Yep. So this is the imperfect equation that we've been talking about in the Raptors roster build literally all year. And I think we're still talking about it.
I just think the front office is going to want to give it a try before selling off on him.
You just gave it a try. You mean with Darko?
Yes, with Darko. That's what I mean.
Bro, he's a coach. He's not a magician. He can't make Pascal into a fundamentally different player. He can put him in a different role. He can put him in a different sets, and he can implement a different strategy for him to get free. And I'm positive that he can get him some easier buckets than he got last year. I know that Darko can make Pascal better. I just don't know if he can make Pascal better while making OG and Scotty better. I think you're setting him up to fail if you're asking him to play with those three guys on the court at the same time, unless Scotty and OG come back as fundamentally different players. I mean, if OG is suddenly capable of dribble creation and he doesn't need to kind of back his man down to get his game off, if Scotty can suddenly space the court and create open driving lanes, I mean, the compounding effect of the ripple effect of one guy fucking over the other guy. So on the one hand, you have Jakob.
Well, he's kind of going to have to be able to shoot to live up to the potential that he has anyways.
Or, you saw him working out with Brian the other day. You saw the Instagram reel, right? You saw that, right? There's still so long to go before that jump shot is anything close to a 38 to 40% 3-point shot, right? We will agree it might be a 2-year process still. So in that process, you probably run out of time with Pascal as a first option guy anyway. So I don't know what we're building towards. The compounding effect, I think the best example of this compounding effect, we saw it against Philadelphia in the series where they just dared Scottie to shoot from the corner and he just missed all those shots because his ankle was stiff or whatever. If Scottie can't make that shot, now you compound the issue by having Jakob. Granted, Jakob and Scottie, really smart players, so they're going to try to still be active and they're going to ping pong, but they're also huge human beings. There's only so many places they can go. The onus there, it's such a cascading effect of impact where one guy's weakness compounds the mess that the other guy has to solve. So Pascal Siakam in an ideal situation is with 4 great shooters. That's where you want to play. He is like a very, 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 very poor man's LeBron James, right? That's what he's trying to be. Trying to be a dribble drive guy. He can do midi pull-ups, get his game off in transition, etc. Be a primary big ball handler. Okay, well, LeBron thrives with one screener who dives to the basket for like little, rim runs like Tristan Thompson or whatever, and 3 shooters. Maybe a primary creator with elite shooting like a Kyrie Irving. That's the ideal roster for LeBron. It always has been, right? A big who can space out helps too, like a Chris Bosh. It doesn't work when you put LeBron with a whole bunch of guys who can't shoot. It never has, right? So you have Scottie in the corner. He's creating a problem because his defender is sagging off of him, daring Pascal to pass to Scottie, which he's not going to because Scottie's maybe not very efficient from there or very willing to. So that kind of collapses the paint a little bit more, making it harder for Pascal to drive. Then you have Fred and Gary, who can't really participate in this play either as anything other than spacers. So they're spacing one side of the court, therefore making the other side of the court small. Now, if OG is not on the court in this situation, spacing the court, the only way this works is Scottie playing center. OG replacing Scottie in the corner, and the 2-man action being between Pascal and Scottie, where Pascal basically becomes the initiator, Scottie becomes the guy diving to the rim. And then the other 3 guys sort of space out, and then that's the way it works. But the minute you start putting Scottie in playmaking opportunities, it doesn't work because Pascal's not a very good screener. Neither of these players force a mismatch because the guy who can guard one probably can guard the other. So then the way it would work is Scottie inverting, putting Scottie in the post, finding a mismatch, putting Scottie in the post. But now it doesn't work because now Pascal is not attracting any sort of attention out there. And teams are like, look, we're going to basically give you 10 feet of clearance and we're going to collapse on Scottie. So it kind of takes away the advantage of both guys. Like you kind of fuck over both players by putting them on the court together. And so, in an egoless world, you stagger the lineups. You put one guy on the bench. And you say, sorry, Scotty Barnes, you're going to the bench because you just don't fit in with this guy. We're still going to pay you 30 minutes. We're trying to make sure all your minutes on the court without him are maximized. But I just don't see it. Like, maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe I'm overthinking this. Y'all free to disagree. But I don't see how these two are a natural basketball fit. I would never pair them in an ideal world. And if you can, change it, you can swap one problem for another problem or one solution for another solution. I think there are a lot of players that fit better with Scottie long-term. And I also think there are a lot of players who fit better than Scottie for Pascal.
I do think you are overthinking it just a little. And, but you might have a point, but like, to me, like, I don't see the urgency. Like, I don't see why it has to be done this week.
Well, look at the rookie season, Scotty Barnes, right? Before Pascal came back. I think that was just very natural Scotty. It was very natural Scotty. There was nothing but space, right, around him, right? We were seeing a lot of Chris Boucher, Precious Achiuwa minutes. We were seeing Scotty firmly at the 4-3, Fred initiating a lot of pick and roll, Scotty, sort of running in transition. We saw a lot of space for Scotty to operate. There wasn't a lot of, second guy with his hand in the cookie jar stuff. Pascal comes back, his numbers dip. He has the worst month of his season. This pattern has repeated itself several times. There's really one promising stretch of basketball that the two players played together, and that was the second half of Scotty's rookie season, where Pascal really took off and Scotty was kind of coming with him. And I don't know how you're supposed to bottle that up with Jakob on the court, because the minute you add Jakob, all of the things that they were doing are no longer possible. I've gone back and studied some of the footage of the Lakers game and some of the good games that they had together, where I'm like, maybe this is hope that these two players can play together. And you see some of the lineups that are with them on the court. I mean, some of them had Thaddeus Young, so maybe, you know, like, but Thad could still space in the corner. He's still shooting 39% from three. The fact that it's just such a messy problem. It's like a Rubik's Cube that you just keep spinning around and round and round. You know what I mean? Like when you get into that loop where you're like, this guy can do this, but then this guy can't do this. But if this guy can't do this, this guy can't do this. And that's where you end up with this entire situation. It's like, well, if one of these guys is always going to be someone that the defense can leave open from three, then that guy always has to be an initiator, and the other guy can't shoot, then that guy's always going to have to be the screener, and there's always going to have to be motion. But then the third guy being on the court at any given time, it should tell you something that Jakob was often not on the court to close the lineup, you know, to close the game last year. Because because at the end of the day, we will agree that championships are the goal, but at the very least, winning a playoff round will be the goal. In a playoff series, I assure you, you cannot play Pascal Siakam, Scotty Barnes, and Jakob in the same lineup. You just cannot. I don't care who your other two players are. The teams will scheme it out. Unless one of these players becomes a fundamentally good shooter that's capable of spacing. And then at the same time, do you really want Scotty spacing? You're taking away such a beautiful part of his game, you know, in the mid post and the high post area where he can sort of survey the court and see everything. So it's like, do you really
offensive rebounding?
Right. And then the other consequence of that is, well, Pascal's also a hell of a playmaker and, you know, a downhill guy, and he's got all this shifty, creative, you know, shit that he does with the basketball. Do you want to limit him by basically relegating him to a corner like OG? Right. And then OG's got all sorts of advantages in the post. And granted, you know, if he can fix some of his balance issues, he can be interesting down there too. So it's like, do you want to waste him spacing? So, like, or are these three guys just going to take turns fucking over each other? You know what I mean? I don't. On the one hand, I'll agree that maybe I'm overthinking this, but I think also maybe some people are underthinking this. Yeah. Anyways, to close this off, what do you got?
All good point.
Yeah, what do you think of Gary Trent Jr. and what would you like? I'll just leave this to all three of you, and then we'll close this off. What would be your ideal outcome for Gary, which is extension, bet on yourself, or trade? And I'll start with Coach Mo.
For the Raptors, extension. I think extension. I think he fits with Scotty. He's like an isolation scorer, microwave kind of guy. I think we can get him cheaper right now, right?
Yeah, I would hate to see how much he grows with Darko, and then you have to renegotiate that deal again.
One thing I like about Gary is Gary had a rough year. I think he got the short end of the stick from the coach, but he was such a professional. He handled it so well. I want to keep that guy because I just think he's a good person. He's mature, and that's why I would keep him.
I agree. Fa?
Yeah, I think Gary did not want to bet on him. He's trying to bet on himself right now, and the fact that Nick Knox is gone, I think that opened the way for him to come back.
Well, what do you make of the report that he's open to an extension? Because I don't think. Like,
I'm not gonna give him what they put in there, right? I think if you can get him for cheap, that's good. And with the new coach and hopefully new ball movement, I think he's gonna.
What's cheap for you? Let's assume it's a 3-year deal again. 3 years, 50.
I think he's likely gonna go for 4 years with the 4th-year player option. So it's gonna be 4 for like 75, 80.
4 for 80, eh?
Yeah.
So then it averages out to 20 million with a 4th year.
Yeah.
Man, if he gets along with Scotty, if Scotty loves him, I think that's important.
I think he does.
Scotty was miserable last year. Miserable.
Yeah, he had to get Carty, the dog.
And
happy belated birthday to Scotty's dog.
With Gary coming back, right? I think they're likely going to draft hopefully a point guard. But listening to
wait a second, happy birthday, Christian Coloco.
Exactly. Yeah, he turned 23 today.
Yes, congratulations, happy birthday, Christian Coloco. And is that what you said?
And I just realized that Christian Coloco is with Clutch Sports.
No, the reason I realized it because I wished Scotty's dog a happy birthday, and I thought to myself, who did Scotty wish a happy birthday to today? Right, Christian Coloco. Yes, happy birthday indeed.
And it's with Clutch Sports, another Clutch Sports Raptors player.
Yep, just keep it up. Well, we lost Nick Nurse, so that's one thing. Unless Darko Rakovic is, signing with Clutch Sports tomorrow. I will rest easy.
You know what guard is signed to Clutch Sport?
Pardon?
You know what guard in the draft is signed to Clutch Sports?
You're going to tell me Keyonte George, isn't it?
Nick Smith Jr.
Nick Smith Jr.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. I heard Keyonte has some maturity issues. This is what I heard from someone who attended his pro day.
Right. I can kind of sense that by just looking by the way he kind of plays.
Yeah. Yeah, they were saying that this might be like he presents himself as like a 16-year-old. Like the way he carries himself and stuff, the way he responds to stuff. So don't be surprised if he falls. I saw a mock draft yesterday with Cason at 19, and I nearly spit out my coffee. I'm like, wow, what am I missing with this guy that other people are seeing that I'm just like, I
think it's possible the back issues, right? Hopefully not. That's why for most reports feels he's dropping. I think he also worked out with Atlanta today.
Yes, that's after shutting down his workouts.
So I think there's speculation that his back issues.
It's just because his game's not flashy. That's what it is, unfortunately. Like,
I watched a couple of his games this week just to rewatch them. I had watched them previously as well, and I tried to count how many mistakes he made in that game, and I ended up at like 4.
No, like, the thing is, like
he's such an error-free player for a young player. That's so rare.
Like, Cason is so fundamentally sound and everything. Like, I've watched so many of his games, but I won't lie, like, they're kind of boring. But like, if it's on defense, like,
he is exciting as fuck on defense. He's so disruptive and so interesting on defense. I get it, and I mean, look, I think it's just a guy who did what was necessary to win, right? I mean,
exactly.
like there's a history of guards from that program who just show something different at the NBA level. It's a kind of repeated take at this point that gets probably repeated at least 2 to 3 times an hour on the internet.
Exactly.
But it is true, right? It has been proven over time that, and I mean, look, I was talking to someone who would know a little bit more than I do about the draft last night, and we were talking about Bilal Coulibaly, right? And very interesting that typically we assume that pro players, especially in France and Italy, and we assume that they're not really put in positions like Overtime Elite or G League Ignite or college players where it's like being developmentally focused. It's all about winning. But with Bilal, there was actually a focus on development this year. There was a focus on bringing him along slowly. There was a focus on nurturing kind of the growth of him and putting him in situations. And I think it was either his coach or his agent or someone who said, like, this guy could go out and score 30, 40 points, no problem. That's not really what we needed from him. It's not really what we wanted from him. And we would put him into situations where it'd be like, okay, this quarter, just cut. This quarter, just playmaking. This quarter, just left hand. And I just thought that was so fascinating. And it was just like, okay, so they're kind of like holding this guy back. And they wouldn't be the first pro club to do this.
He's a lot more skilled than he's getting credit for.
Pardon?
He's a lot more skilled than he's getting credit for.
I think he is a lot more skilled. One thing that people don't necessarily talk about enough with Bilal is the growth spurt that he had, where he went from about, I think, 5'6", 5'7", to about 6'1", and then from 6'1" to about 6'7". Like, he's had 2 different growth spurts, and he started out as a guard. He has a lot of guard skills, a lot of playmaking chops. He was on occasion, towards the end of the season, being used to bring the ball up the court. So there is a dynamicism to his game where he can be an off-ball threat. He can cut behind the defense. He's an athletic finisher. I'm just looking at his defensive upside, going up against grown men, and I'm just wondering if this guy played for Duke or Kentucky this year, would we be talking about like this is the best defender in the draft? You know what I mean? Because we're not talking about him that way right now, and we probably should be. He has it, and he is also an incredible finisher, like a play finisher. Like, near the basket, he lives there. He gets. I can see this guy being the type of player who gets to the line like 6-7 times a game, 8 times a game in his prime. So physical, invites the contact. So yeah, there's some players that I'm just
Yeah,
Thursday cannot come fast enough, man. I'm so all sorts of nervous, excited.
Yeah,
And it's gonna be interesting because these 4 players just got invited to the green room.
Which
Olivia Mas Prosper,
what?
Brandon Podzimski,
That I'm not surprised by.
then Ryan Rupert,
Wow.
Wow.
and Jamie Jaques from UCLA. Jamie.
Really?
What?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
They
And
said
this is also Noah Clowney is in the green room as well, right?
Yeah, this for like an hour ago. They just got
Do you have a
invited.
list? Do you have a list of all the guys in the green room?
There's one that came out last.
Yes.
Can you read it out to me?
Let me send it to you. You want me to send it to your Instagram or?
I think I could
Why don't you just post the link? Do you have a link?
I have the link here.
Yeah, just give me the link in the comments and I can put it on the screen so everyone can see it.
Sure. I'm gonna just give me a second here.
You think it's going to be a crazy day on Thursday?
It is gonna be interesting because the report is saying that this guy is saying that he doesn't want to play with any young players anymore again. So they're likely gonna trade him or trade the pick.
I have it in front of me if you want me to read it out.
I just
I mean,
sent it to the private chat. You see?
okay. Oh, okay, I see it.
Yeah, 25 so far. Wow, that's a lot of players.
25 players. That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's basically that's the entire first round.
Chris Murray declined.
Pardon?
Chris Murray declined.
Chris Murray declined. He said he wants to watch it from home.
That's crazy. But also kind of funny. So there were 26?
25, there was 24 left.
Okay, I'm gonna put it up on the screen. Hang on. Okay. So this is the list.
Yep.
Victor Wembanyama, Brandon Miller, Scoot Henderson, Evan Thompson, Azar Thompson, Cam Whitmore, Jarris Walker, Anthony Black, Taylor Hendricks, Grady Dick, Bilal Coulibaly, Cason Wallace, Nick Smith Jr., Derek Lively, Kobe Buffkin, Jalen Hood-Schifino, Jett Howard, Jordan Hawkins, Keyonte George, Chris Murray declined, Noah Clowney, okay, Prosper, Pozinski, Rupert, and Jamie Vasquez. Names that surprised me here: Prosper, Vasquez. I'm not too surprised by Noah Clowney. I watched a little bit of film on him yesterday just to get familiar because it's a player that I just didn't watch enough this year. I see it. I see a lot of the tools. But here's a name that's missing. Wait, hold on.
I heard Cam Whitmore is dropping. Likely it might drop to 9.
Yeah, you sent me that. But is there a name here that is really, really gapping out to you as like, whoa, I can't believe this guy's not here? Think about it.
Where's Grady Dick?
This guy from Barcelona.
Grady Dick is there.
This guy from Barcelona,
Okay,
Unagi.
Not okay. Yes, that's one player who I'm surprised is missing because I certainly have heard a lot of top 20 stuff about him. But
Sensible.
Bryce Sensabaugh is another player that is definitely missing. There's a player who's been mocked. I'm forgetting his name right now because I don't know why I'm forgetting his name. He's Canadian, G League Ignite.
Oh, this guy.
Right? Fuck. How am I forgetting his name? Like it's just a complete brain fart right now.
And they asked Raptors about him today. They said that he's still developing. What's his name again?
Oh, Miller. Leonard Miller.
Leonard Miller.
He's not on here.
That's crazy.
It's not like, I mean, I expected him to drop for sure. Like I believe I mocked him 22nd or 23rd. But like to have 26, 25 guys.
They're going to be really, really good players in the second round. Derek Whitehead is there.
Derek Whitehead. I think the second round is kind of weak.
The first part of the second round up to like 35.
Up to 35, yes. But after that, it gets so bad. And it actually sucks because of all the guys that went back because of the NIL stuff. It really does limit the Raptors' potential to find, a Kenny Lofton Jr. type or even a Ron Harper Jr. I don't even think there's a Ron Harper going to be in the undrafted heap. The player that most let's end it on this. One player that you think could jump to the lottery that most people aren't mocking in the lottery for, I don't know. Like for me, I think Ryan Rupert could jump to the lottery.
I think so too. I think so too. And it's
something about his tools, he's just been so not talked about enough.
Some people even compare him that he might be better than Coulibaly.
I don't see that.
I don't think he'll be better long term, but I certainly understand the small sample size argument. I was looking at
Coulibaly's way ahead of him offensively, I feel like. Not way ahead, just ahead again.
I think his potential is higher, but I was looking at Killian Hayes' numbers. When he was in the youth leagues and I think he played U18 or whatever. Like his numbers were so far ahead of Bilal's, so far ahead, right? And to consider how much he's flopped in the NBA, it's kind of interesting to just observe that. And I'm not saying
the funniest part is that they're both compared to OG Anunoby.
And I don't see that at all. I don't see OG Anunoby and Bilal Coulibaly. I understand they're both African prospects.
Their physical tool, there's nothing.
The way they move is totally different. Their strengths are different. The lateral quickness of a Bilal Coulibaly is nuts. The way this guy covers.
They're just both 6'8" and have a 7'2" wingspan. That's it. Nothing else similar at all.
I think Bilal is closer to Pascal as an athlete than he is to OG, just in terms of fluidity. But I just think he's a more powerful athlete. I don't know if that makes sense. But I think there's certain guys who go up with force. And he feels like he goes up with force, even though he's not.
Quick question: are you going to do the final mock tomorrow?
Yeah, I want to do a big board. I want to do a Raptors big board. I don't give a shit about mocks anymore. I've done 4 mocks. I want to do a Raptors big board, as in, who do they see? Who do they see up? Because obviously, there's definitely a guy in the top 10 that everyone else would take top 10. The Raptors would probably not take top 10. So
because what they said today, Tosman said today that they're looking at the top 5, the 5 to 10, because you never can know, anything can happen on draft night. So, and also in case somebody falls from the top 10 that's available at 13, you want to be able to.
But they haven't worked out these guys. That's the problem. They worked out Jordan Hawkins. They worked out Cason Wallace, but they haven't worked out Scoot Henderson. As far as I know,
they didn't work out Koloko last year.
That's fair. Mm-hmm. That's fair, but that was visa issues. That's not a lack of preparation or whatever. They just couldn't get around to working him out, and I think they had a really, really good feel for Christian Koloko. Granted, I mean, look, they have a really good feel at this point for Cason Wallace. They've watched him live at least 3 times. They've had scouts out to watch Bilal Coulibaly. I don't know if they're going to have a chance to work him out.
They worked out Cason Wallace, right? They did.
They did. They worked out Cason Wallace. They worked out Jordan Hawkins.
They worked out 20 players.
Did they work out Grady Dick? No, I don't think so.
I think they have enough.
And Kobe Buffkin's camp has been very, very secretive about who he's working out with for some reason.
I think he's working out with the Wizards, so he's likely gonna go 8.
Yeah, I'm hearing that too. But it's man, I'm
not worried because
every time I find myself
somebody will drop to us regardless.
Every time I find myself getting off of Anthony Black a little bit, I watch one more of his games, and I'm just I love this guy so much. I love him as a player.
He's
every fucking thing he does.
Washington.
Pardon?
He's not getting past Washington.
Well, if he's not getting past Washington and Cason's not getting past Washington, well, I mean, you're not saying Cason, so some people are, and some people are saying Kobe Buffkin's not getting past Washington. I mean, Washington's in a very enviable spot because they're gonna have their pick of whatever guard they want. They're gonna get him. If they want Keyonte, they can get him. If they want Cason, they want Jalen Hood-Schifino, whatever, they can get him. But weighing out
after trading Beal, I feel like now they're going to lean more towards more upside than fit.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like in that case, it's Black.
Do you think why Black
You think Anthony Black has more upside than Kobe Buffkin? Where do you arrive to that conclusion? Because they're very similar in age. I feel like people write off Kobe because he's a little bit older.
They need the point guard, right?
I think
all point
Black's
guards.
More of a point guard.
He is more of a point guard for sure, but
way better passer. Probably a little bit bigger, not by much, but a little bit.
I mean, he's bigger. He's like what? He measured out at 6'6",
6'7",
6'7".
Okay.
There's this wingspan that got measured at this pretty much 6'7" as well too. That was a little underwhelming.
That is super underwhelming because when you watch him, you don't feel it. So I wonder what happened with that measurement. Is it just because he has narrow shoulders a little bit? He does. He does have kind of narrow shoulders, not very broad shouldered, and that obviously impacts your wingspan a lot.
I think out of all the players in the draft, I think he's going to benefit the most from the spacing in the league.
Mm-hmm.
Out of all the players?
Because I feel like that Arkansas team had no spacing whatsoever.
I think Bilal Coulibaly and Victor Wembanyama would have something to say about that, my friend. You imagine Victor Wembanyama, 7'5" on those fucking French courts, bruh. He is literally too big for those courts, and it's like put that guy with NBA spacing, and suddenly like he has NBA quickness too. Like, oh my god, I think he could thrive more.
I see what you mean, but like my point is like because we already expect like Wemby.
I see. You mean like of the other guys? Because I think Scoot's also going to benefit a lot from space.
Because like it's like I'm saying like the same scenario with Scotty. Like Scotty averaged 11 points in college and then came to the NBA because of the spacing, brought that up to 15.
But I think Scotty was more like a straight line driver, and that's like the Giannis mold of straight line drivers, and I think those guys always like do well. It's those shifty guys that I think could go either way, like a Ja Morant,
So if
I don't know.
If Cam Whitmore drops to 13, and you have Cam Whitmore, Bilal Coulibaly, and Kobe Buffkin at 13, who do you pick?
All of them.
I go more.
I don't see Cam falling to 13. Someone's going to be enamored. I understand there was some rumor that he's falling. There was also a rumor that he's rising. Okay, there was a rumor yesterday that he was going to go as high as 3 or 4, and then completely on the same day, someone's like he could fall to 9. Right. I look at floor. I think the range on him is anywhere from 4 to 9. And personally, I would take Jarris Walker over him. That's not a popular take, but it is my take. I like Jarris Walker more. I don't know. And then look, Cam Whitmore kind of being misrepresented as a prospect as only this athletic guy. He was also great off the catch. I think he has tools defensively. It's a phenomenal athlete. Really just expanded his game as a scorer. He's younger than most of these guys too. And it's just like, there's a phenomenal it was like a lecture by the guy with curly hair whose name I'm just forgetting right now, who's just really great at leading lectures about this shit. Anyways, it was talking about the impact at a youth level of being a little bit older than guys, like 3-4 months, 5 months, and effectively like what a big difference it makes to be January born versus December born when the calendar year is clicked on the age. And yeah, like, so you look at a guy and okay, so this is actually a really interesting note to sort of close this out on as well. I think for the third and final time, sorry about that. This has been a good conversation. I think this has been an interesting conversation. We've covered a lot of ground.
I do want to read out just one stat before we
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, guys. So high major freshmen with 100 plus free throw attempts.
Oh boy.
And 225 plus 3-point attempts.
Oh man.
I'm gonna read out the list for you guys. All right. Trae Young, RJ Barrett, D'Angelo Russell, Keyonte George, Anthony Edwards, Kobe White, Jamal Murray, Malik Monk, Brandon Miller, Cam Reddish, and James Young.
Cam Reddish, huh?
Basically showing all his, I guess these would be his, I guess his ceiling and his I guess his floor as well too.
Yeah, I was looking at I was looking at the numbers between Cam, sorry, not Cam Reddish. I was looking at the numbers between Keyonte George, Cade Cunningham at Oklahoma State, and then I was looking at Brandon Miller. Right, I was looking at these three players, and I was like comparing them across the board. His usage was like higher than both those guys.
Yeah.
His shot attempts are like higher, and his efficiency is worse. His playmaking is worse than everybody. So I was just like, okay, like you can make a case that it's injury, fine, whatever. But to me, it's like you look at what Kobe Buffkin did with increased usage once Jet Howard went out, and he's the coach's son. And I'm just like, I'm not really jumping over myself for a guy who had 52% true shooting in Division I basketball. And also I want to reiterate, this actually bleeds in perfectly to my final point.
Okay.
Yesterday, somebody sent me a list of every single prospect ranked by every metric imaginable. And it took a lot of work. And I apologize to that person. You sent me a Facebook message. I did not respond to you. I get a ton of, I'm not trying to be like arrogant or anything. I get a lot of Facebook messages that are super unsolicited, and people are just like messaging me basketball stuff. And sometimes I'll read it. And I looked at it, and it was really nice that this person had compiled all this shit together. And it was just like, there was one glaring issue with all of this. How are you supposed to compare 10 points per game for G League Ignite, 10 points per game for the Overtime Elite, 10 points per game in France, 10 points per game in Division I basketball, 10 points per game in the Big 12, 10 points per game in the AAC? Like, it's so hard because the competition is so wildly different. So you gotta like literally find a way to scale and adjust. And at the same time, you look at a guy like Jalen Williams last year, and everyone's doubting him because he played at Santa Clara, and they'd be like, they don't play anybody. And they're wrong because, like it translated, because all the shit that he was doing in Santa Clara, it wasn't like he could only play against the fucking people who he was going up against. He can't play against someone he's not playing. And so you look at a guy like that and you're like, well, they didn't play anybody, and, he still ended up good. But then you look at the similar criticism where they say Gonzaga has a soft schedule every single year because of where they play with Jalen Suggs, and that did prove to be true, that inferior competition. So I think it's worth noting that Keyonte played one of the toughest schedules in college basketball in the Big 12.
4th ranks. Well, I actually looked, it's funny you mentioned it because I actually looked up like strength of schedule for like majority of college teams. So Baylor had the 4th one of all D1 teams. Kentucky had the 22nd. And I think Alabama was right above Baylor, the 3rd.
Yep.
I think UConn was 6th.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's such an important thing. Are you a bench player who gets a lot of your minutes against second units? Are you a starter? Are you a first option, second option? So yes, you can look at everything that Keyonte George did as a first option on a team that had one of the hardest schedules, and he's a young guy, he's a freshman, and you can try to project forward what that might mean at the next level when there are guys who are better than him on the court, and he can attack defenders one-on-one instead of always having that second defender, third defender shading over. But I got to be honest, like I think there's a lot of guesswork that goes into how someone projects from one type of player to another. And I think any team that picks him is rolling a dice majorly, because and you know what? I watched a couple of games from him yesterday. I watched including the one he had against Anthony Black. I was positively surprised by his defense a little bit more than I have been in the past. I think he gets up. I think he's active, alert. He tries.
It's like he's your typical like guy that gets up. Like if he knows he's
Gary Trent.
When he's playing, he's one of those guys where I feel like
he gets up for his matchup.
Exactly. If we're playing Charlotte, he's going to be terrible that day on defense. He's just not going to. He's going to lose his man. Like, but if we're playing the Lakers, all of a sudden he's going to be up into his assignment. Like he's that type of guy who, it depends on who he plays type of thing.
Right. And I mean, if you look at him versus Desmond Bane in terms of just raw upside, athletic tools, upside, athleticism, whatever. And if you assume that Darko Rajakovic can work miracles with anybody, not that he's going to be the main development guy for the team, whatever, but let's just say that he has a support staff in place that can mold guys out of clay into whatever type of player. If you have experience with a Devin Booker, if you have experience with a Desmond Bane, I don't see how the stretch is so different to have that type of success with a Keyonte George. So let's just say that if I started this draft process out as I am 1,000 million gazillion % going to cry if we draft Keyonte George, let's just say I will be cautiously pessimistic if we draft Keyonte George.
Progress.
I'm not going to be happy about it at all, but I'm going to trust that some of that alpha scoring that we've seen from him at the next level, with more space, with increased athleticism, with more health, with him being in better shape, not putting on those 20 pounds, etc. Look, he's become an obsession of mine. An obsession, because I don't want to be in the same position that I was in last year with Ben Mathurin, where I discounted a guy who I think didn't have great playmaking. And granted, I mean, all the playmaking gaps are still there with Ben Mathurin. He is a fucking chucker to the max degree, but he was efficient. He was efficient enough at the NBA level. He played with Tyrese Halliburton, and it just worked. I think most people would agree that he would go top 7 again. So, with Keyonte, like, honestly, a lot of the same things I didn't like about him, that I didn't like about Ben Mathurin, same stuff I don't like about Keyonte. It's just he's a way worse athlete.
If Scotty's not on this team, I don't want Keyonte on this team. A lot of the reason why I want Keyonte is because Scotty's on this team. I believe Scotty will be able to get him a lot way easier shots. And he plays better when he's playing off ball and attacking closeouts compared to dribbling and try to create his own shot. I feel like I feel like you could get him to play that way. I don't feel like it's going to be that hard to mold him to play that way.
So it's like you have a guy who is, quite frankly, he was freshman of the year in his conference. He was one of the better players in college basketball, and I think he doesn't even know how to play basketball. That's the problem with Keyonte George. I don't think he knows how to play basketball.
And I feel like Darko and Jama, that's their job. Teach them how to play basketball.
So if you could teach that guy how to play basketball, then all the skill work is so far along. But then my question is, okay, flip it. What about Jordan Hawkins? Someone with a little bit more athletic upside, in my opinion, right? What is the more projectable outcome? Jordan Hawkins turns into a Desmond Bane type, or Keyonte George turns into a Desmond Bane type? Because I'll tell you, one uphill battle you will not have to climb with Jordan Hawkins. You do not need to teach that guy how to play basketball. And I don't know, like, most 18, 19-year-olds that have been as highly touted as Keyonte has from high school up in the AAU and college and whatever, most of them aren't coming in with the opinion that I don't know anything, teach me how to play basketball. I think most of them are coming in with, yeah, I know what I'm doing with my career. I know how to play. Just put me in a position to score. And some of those guys, they never figure it out. You look at a lot of guys in the NBA like that, where they just never figured out how to fit into a team concept that wasn't rooted around them. So I think that the jump that I would have to make, where it's just so high with him, and I've seen it fail so many times with players like this, that I wouldn't be super happy if the Raptors took that risk. But if they do take that risk, then they must know that there is a pathway to make him more of a team player.
Yeah, the reason I feel better about that, to me, is like all the research I've done. He showed that he wants to be coached. Like he was one of the best players in Texas. That's where he's originally from. He's one of the best players at Texas. He could have easily stayed in Texas and then gone to Baylor, but he decided to go to IMG to be, for that point exactly, to be coached by the best, to play against the best for his senior year. And then he chose to go to Baylor to be coached by...
I mean, Cade did the same thing. Cade left Texas to go to Montverde. I don't understand why that's necessarily such a glowing endorsement for him.
I feel like, I feel like that...
Because you're doing something challenging to challenge yourself?
Exactly, that you want to play against the best.
But I mean, like...
You want to be coached by the best?
I feel like people like scouts are more active in California and Florida. So I think you could make a very good case that you go to a team like Montverde or IMG or any one of these powerhouse schools. Previously it was Mount Zion or Chino Hills. Like there's so many there's so many schools that have been like prominent. I think there's like one that's coming up. I can't remember it, but I posted about it on Instagram, where like the number 1 and number 2 player in the 2026 class are gonna be on the same team in high school.
I don't know if you heard, but within the last 2 years, they actually created like this high school league in the States that's like apparently only the top high schools in the league play in this league. I think that started maybe this is the 3rd year it's been going on.
Mm-hmm.
And like it's all basically all those top schools, so Mount Zion, Monterey, it's their own league, and they only play each other basically, or something like that.
That's pretty cool. I mean, yeah, and again, like this is the strength of schedule thing. Who is another guy who went to IMG? Was Anthony Simons another IMG guy?
Anthony Simons, maybe
he was a Florida guy. And he did skip. He went to a prep school to skip university. So I don't know, man. I look. I've watched a lot of guys, come through the league where I'm like, if that guy can only buy in, and they usually don't. 90% of guys don't. So if Keyonte has shown in interviews, which I have heard nothing to the effect of, oh, he's interviewing really well and teams are really blown away by his humility and acceptance. I think he's more or less coming in with this. I mean, I don't mean I wasn't there. I don't want to say like what he's coming in with, but
what are your thoughts on Barlow and what he's been saying recently,
specifically about Keyonte
and the Raptors?
Does he keep linking Keyonte to the Raptors? Basically,
he's basically said that Keyonte has a promise by the Raptors.
I don't see how he would possibly know that, unless, of course, he's really close to Keyonte.
Yeah, I think he said if he drops, he's not dropping past the Raptors. Pretty much, the Raptors are going to take him.
Yeah, that's a little bit different than he has a promise from the Raptors, because I don't see why the hell the Raptors would give possibly the 15th to 18th best prospect a promise at 13. You have no idea who could drop. Why would you make a promise? I don't think the Raptors make promises like this.
And that was, but I think Raptors like him, though. They really like him,
bro. I don't trust any of this, because look, I feel I was one of maybe 3 people with any platform at all in the Raptor space that said it was going to be Scotty in 2021. Everyone said Suggs. Okay, I don't think most people have a clue what the Raptors are going to do. I don't think the Raptors know what they're going to do. I think they have I think they have their big board.
I was saying,
but this guy said today, what's his name again? Their vice president for scouting or stuff, said that with Daco on board right now, kind of gives them a different perspective on how they see some of the players on the draft.
I think it would give them slightly.
Think of Desmond Baines and Keyonte, right? On what maybe Daco can do with him.
I think that's fair. I mean, if a coach has had a certain track record with a certain type of player before, and they're confident that they can see some of the similar overlaps, I would tell you I watched a little bit of Desmond Bain in college, did not remind me of Keyonte at all. So I understand that they have similar limitations and that they have limited wingspan. They're both undersized guards. I'm sorry, like to me, Desmond Bain is a 99.9% outcome. Like, it is not supposed to happen that a guy with negative wingspan can become a competent defender at the NBA level. He's had to work at this so hard. So to project that to be Keyonte's outcome is hard for me. He'll be different. Better or worse, I have no idea. As I said,
usually I don't like believe any rumors when it comes to like Raptors giving promises or even anything in general. But
ask yourself, why would they? Why would they promise Keyonte George? What are they doing? They're not trying to keep him in the draft. He's already in the draft.
I think if you're only promising somebody that's projected top 10, right, or top 8.
The only reason, I kind of believe it is just because the relationship that Barlow has with a lot of these prospects in the draft, especially the ones from Texas. He's known Keyonte and Cason since the 5th grade.
Who has these relationships?
Barlow. He's known both of them since the 5th grade.
Okay.
And he's pretty close. He's pretty close with their parents as well too. I think I remember I came on one time and mentioned that like their birthdays are separated by like a day apart. I heard that on his podcast. He was talking about like the birthdays are separated by a day apart, and like the one that's older calls the other guy little brother or stuff like that. So he knows Cason and Keyonte fairly well. So that's the only reason I kind of
But here's the thing. You can be close to Keyonte George. You can be close to Scotty Barnes. You can be close to Scotty's parents. You can understand this person, that person. Neither Scotty's parents, nor Scotty, nor Cason's parents, nor Cason, nor Keontae's parents, nor Keyonte are completely clued into what Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster are doing right now. It's just impossible. There's no way that, like, for me, from my perspective, having watched Masai Ujiri operate for 10 years, there's no chance in hell they make a promise to Keyonte George unless there's one of three reasons to do so. Number one, it is to shut down his workouts, which it has not. He has continued to work out. So if you had a promise at 13, why is he still working out for teams behind you? Right? Number two, it would be to assure the player to stay in the draft, which, again, zero indications that he was ever entertaining going back to Baylor. And number three, it is to assure a prospect who's maybe expecting to go a little bit lower. Again, it's actually just the same thing. Again, it's to shut down the workout. So like someone like a Bilal Coulibaly, I would understand a promise, because that guy's range is so wildly lower. Like he's been projected anywhere from like 9 to like 27. So if he has a promise at 13, it might keep him in the draft, right? But for a guy like,
because like the reason why like I kind of believe a little bit more is because like today he had like so a video came out today, and he had an interview with one of that girl from Yahoo Sports. I forget her name right now.
Okay.
And he mentioned that, and he brought it up again.
Rafael Barlow?
Yeah. And he brought up again, but this time he said if Bilal's not there.
Okay, then that's not a promise. And also, like, I mean, like, I want to be careful how I say this. I have a lot of respect for anyone who grinds in this game for as long as Rafael Barlow has, for sure. I'm not trying to make enemies with even more people in the media. I have respect for him. He generally knows what he's talking about. I've listened to a 2-hour interview with him, and I have learned nothing new in 2 hours before. Okay, and this is as recently as last year. So I'm not like, and I feel the same way about a lot of draft experts, man. They had Stephen Yu, I can't remember his name, on Yahoo Sports yesterday. I didn't get anything super new from him either. There is nothing that I can walk away from that interview with that he did with names are just not coming to me today. Will Liu, where I'm like, oh wow, I really didn't know that about that prospect, or I really had never thought about that with that prospect. I haven't gotten anything like that from these guys. I often felt the same way about Mike Schmitz as well. I know that he's really highly regarded. I think a lot of, that guy Jay Billis, right? Like, I think a lot of people who cover the draft just either don't know what they're talking about, miss certain things, they fall into groupthink patterns, and I respect anyone who kind of has their own opinion. And the guy who Will Liu was interviewing yesterday, he was just like, I like to stay off Twitter, so like my opinions don't get tainted by this guy and that guy and whatever. But ask yourself the question, if he's so close to Keyonte George, and he keeps talking about Keyonte George, and he keeps talking about how Keyonte was injured, Keyonte was overweight, Keyonte didn't have an opportunity, Keyonte was promised this before his draft, Keyonte was promised this. Well, do you not see how Keyonte George is such a key to him becoming successful or more successful at what he does? Do you not see how the access he has to Keyonte George is possibly tainting his views on Keyonte George, and some of this bullshit propaganda that I have to deal with Raptor fans on a daily basis on Twitter telling me Keyonte is better than this guy and that guy and that guy, and everything they're saying is coming from Rafael Barlow, man. All of the fucking takes. It's like word for word borrowed. And people just listen to this guy because he's everywhere. He's on Yahoo Sports. He's on Locked On Big Board. He's on this and that. He was on Was he also on Locked On Raptors? I think he probably was. So it's like he's everywhere, and everywhere it's Keyonte to 13, Keyonte to 13. Well, guess who's benefiting from Keyonte to 13 rumors? Keyonte George. Because there's all these rumors that he might fall to 16, 18, 20, 22. He could fall, like their teams are souring on him. He's not interviewing well. Well, now you throw out this bullshit rumor that he's going 13. Does it make maybe a team at 15 feel really happy that they got the guy who is supposed to be locked at 13 at 15? Every time you can big up a guy's draft value. If I was Kobe Buffkin's best friend right now, you know what I would start doing? I would start a rumor that Kobe Buffkin has received strong interest from the Detroit Pistons at number 5, or from the Indiana Pacers at number 7, or anywhere higher than is the floor for where he's mocked. And I would start peddling that all the time. And I would hope that some other team that respects a team that I'm saying is interested in him is going to give him a more serious look. I don't think Keyonte George is going to be a Raptor. I don't think there's but despite whether he becomes a Raptor or not, I would bet so much money that there's no chance in hell that the Raptors gave him a promise. So if Rafael Barlow is saying 13 is his floor, then it is probably to incentivize somebody above the Raptors to pick him, like the Orlando Magic. Now, everyone has phones, and Jeff Weltman can just be fucking call Masai Ujiri, and I don't know if he'd get a straight answer from him. He'd just be like, "Are you interested in this guy?" Because I'm not interested in this guy, and they both figure it out real quick. But maybe the team picking between them doesn't figure it out because they don't have such strong relationships. I think front offices talk. If Kobe Buffkin's on the court, on the floor, I think there's just certain guys that they get rumored to be higher than they are, and then every single time it's like this guy has a promise at 8 or whatever, and then it turns out to not be true, and then the guy's still on the board at 17, and people are like, how's he falling? And it's like he was never that high to begin with. It was all the draft hype, all propaganda, all favors, all agent favors. Nobody benefits. The Raptors would never promise him. I don't think they'd ever promise. I feel so confident in saying they would never promise Keyonte George a slot at 13, because 13 is such a weird place in the draft. You can't know who's going to be there. You don't know. I mean, God damn it. If you make a promise to this guy, and the Raptors are such an integral, an organization with so much integrity, they would never break a promise either. That's the other part of it. Masai is not going to break a promise to a player. So imagine if like fucking Cam Whitmore or Jarris Walker or like Asar Thompson or fucking Cason Wallace, Anthony Black. What if they all fall? What if someone goes nuts and takes Leonard Miller 10th? Someone goes insane and picks Noah Clowney 11th. And now suddenly like you got like all the prospects you ever wanted at 13 and you made a promise to Keyonte George. I mean, you'd have to love this guy. The only way the Raptors made this promise is they see Keyonte George as a top 5 pick in this draft. They'd have to be that high on him, and I don't know how the fuck they would ever get that high on him. He's not their type of prospect. The only thing that makes me optimistic that you could be right, that he could be on their radar, is when Bobby Webster, Mr. CIA, said we're going to pick a Raptors-like prospect. And that to me was just like, okay, go the other way. They're going to go against Raptor-type prospect, and the most anti-Raptor-type prospect in this draft.
I felt that too, actually. It was funny enough. I'm like, is he like... Like,
or maybe he expected everyone to be like, this is a bluff, and they're actually going to pick Bilal Coulibaly, who is literally, I heard a rumor the other day that Bilal translates the Raptor, and Coulibaly translates the prototype. I'm joking, obviously, but yeah, like, I mean, I don't.
To be fair, he never said he has a promise. He just says he can't see him getting past 13.
Fair enough, but when you have access to a player and everyone knows that you have access to this player, as you know that he's 5th grade, he's known him since 5th grade. Well, here's the question then. Would you assume that someone might hear someone who's close to Keyonte George saying that he's not going to fall past 13 and kind of start to assume that Keyonte George has a promise at 13? I think it's not much of a leap to draw, right? But obviously, if you've watched Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster work for long enough, you probably understand this is just not the way they operate. Just my opinion. I don't think they do it. Anyways, this has been a great live, been fantastic, a lot of long conversation, which is eventually, and as always, just fall into Keyonte George stuff. Man, all those people who say like Rob is just going to be negative next year. If Fred leaves, he's going to find somebody else to pick on. Yes, that player will be Keyonte George. All right.
Can't wait.
All right, man. Have a good one. See you,
All
FA.
right,
Have a
guys.
good one, FA.
Bye-bye.
Peace, guys. All right. What an interesting live. I really like that. I really love that discussion. I know some people have written into the comments that they prefer the lives without, callers. I'll be honest with you. My opinion on this has always been I've loved the lives with callers more than the ones without callers, because this channel's never been just about me talking into a microphone, as some people might prefer that. But I love this long form content, and I feel like I learn more from the lives. I learn more. I don't know if you guys learn more or get more, but I learn more from the lives which have callers. So I apologize, it wasn't overly active with the comment section and wasn't paying too much attention there. But at one point we had almost 300 people in here, which is really cool. Country Kong saying Rafael Barlow knows his stuff. I mean, sure, he's not wrong about a lot of stuff, but I haven't walked away from anything that I've heard from him and been like, oh wow, that really blew me away. Like it's just it's a lot of cool to know. This guy's, it's information. It's like it's a lot of well-researched stuff. But it's not necessarily like next level thinking stuff. And I think that's where I would opt for draft coverage that takes me more into next level thinking about like how certain things how certain prospects translate, how certain styles impacted. And I'm less interested in this guy played this many games and this guy had an injury on this date stuff. Like I feel like that's like very Wikipedia spark note stuff. And again, like this is sounding very salty, and I'm not trying to be salty. I guess what I'm pissed off about, to be completely honest, is I feel like every time I encounter somebody who's very like pro Keyonte George, they're borrowing all their takes from an episode that I've watched of Rafael Barlow. And I think this is how, the Jalen Suggs, Scotty Barnes thing started, because Sam Vecini says Scotty's a no-level scorer. And now, for 2 years, he has to ride out that wave of that bullshit take. And I just think like on draft night, I'm prepared for the Raptors to pass on Keyonte George and pick somebody that maybe people aren't expecting. And then for an entire summer, I have to deal with people saying, "Oh my God, I can't believe they picked Keyonte. They didn't pick Keyonte George. Look, Keyonte George just put up 26 points in a summer league game. Look, look, there's a very good chance I'm open to it that 2 years from now, we look back on this Keyonte George an 18-point per game score, and everyone's like, Rob, you were wrong. Totally open to it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I doubt it. Cena Tam is on. This is going to be a 5-minute conversation at most. What's up, man?
How's it going, man? How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. I just woke up to the news, actually.
Yeah? You're gonna want to watch the beginning of this live. I offer all my takes there. I don't want to repeat myself at this point, though. But yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
Gary, man. I think there's a lot of guards in the NBA that like have like an equal amount of skill set with Gary, but like I'm pretty excited that he's coming back. Like I think I just think that like the chemistry between him and Nurse didn't work, and you can kind of tell. And it's just like he didn't really develop since the 2021 and 22 season. But like I think he's just like a solid guard to have on your team. And like, it's on a good contract. It's 18.5 mil. And I think if he develops this year, then he's definitely worth like the contract he's looking for. But I think it's a solid pickup. Like I had zero clue that he was going to opt in. Like I didn't see that coming at all.
Yeah, clearly, I mean, we're probably really far apart on how much we think Gary Trent actually developed last year. I talked earlier in this live. Maybe some people missed it. Obviously, you just woke up, so you definitely missed it. Where I talked about how much his playmaking and his paint finishing improved, and if his 3-point shooting can go back to where it was Tampa year and maybe the year after, I think you have a hell of a formidable backcourt mate for Scotty Barnes. I think he has a lot of positives, namely fourth quarter scoring was really good in the clutch. Isolation scoring, he was one of the best on the team. I think this notion that, you know, is a highly replicable skill set is a bit of a misnomer. I think there aren't a lot of teams out there who have two guys who can score out of isolation like him. And I think Darko is just going to unlock him. Anyways, that's a spark notes of what I talked about at the beginning of this live. I mean, this has been 3 hours, so definitely go check out the beginning if you're interested in that. But yeah. Thanks a lot for calling in, Cena. And yeah, good news for the Raptors. Peace, man. See ya.
Yeah.
Alrighty. If you haven't hit subscribe, please hit subscribe. Help get us to 10,000 subscribers, so I can prove to all the haters that this channel has a chance. I don't know. You know, I had the weirdest encounter this morning. I'll share this with like a very stupid anecdote. It's not even an anecdote. I have no idea why I'm ending a live on this, but it's just it's a funny side note because it bothered me this morning. So last night I'm clearing out my friends' requests, and not my friend requests, but like my friend suggestions, because I'm tired of seeing the same people being suggested by Facebook over and over and over again. And I apparently, because it was like 4 a.m. or 5 a.m. and I was just passively doing it, I must have clicked add friend on this girl that I went on a date with like 4 years ago. Now I'll tell you, very memorable date for a couple of reasons. Number one, honestly, I'd never been so out of sorts on a date, I think, in my life. Like, I remember just like watching myself fuck that date up. Like, I was just like, what are you saying, bro? Like, you just stop talking. Shut up, you know? And I remember her being really pretty. Like, I remember her being really attractive. So I was like, I wonder if I got intimidated by that or whatever. And bro, this morning, and I cleared that up. I did not add her. I thought I didn't add her. And this morning, I got a message saying, what? It was like, what? Really? I think it was like, what? Really? And I woke up and I was like, huh? Like, what's this about? And she's like, the friend request. And then she straight up blocked me. And I was just like, yo, like, I remember the preamble to this date being like her trying to say like she doesn't want to date someone who's into money or something like that. I think I had like presented like some element of like, I'm interested in making money. And she's just like, oh, all people who make money are assholes or something like that. And I just remember like, and she threatened to like kind of cancel the date. And then last minute she accepted the date and something like that. And it's just like, yo, dealing with people who think that you are one way can make you feel like you might actually be that way. Like I felt like a threat. You know what I mean? Like I accidentally clicked add friend. My bad. I promise I was not creeping anybody, whatever. I was just trying to clear it out, remove. Clearly my finger slipped and I added someone. But like this reaction of like, what? And it's like, yo, bro, like chill. I don't know. So I think like, what was my takeaway from this? If you treat people like they're bad people, I think you'll get the worst out of people. If you treat people like they're good people, you might get better out of people. If you treat someone like they're a threat, like you're going to make it a threat. Here's another example. This is a terrible example, bro. And I'm starting to feel real bad about this. A couple of days ago, I did a live and I was kind of late to get to the live. And why was I late to the live? Because someone in my building heard that I do some dog training, right? And she was like, yo, can you meet my 2 dogs, right? One of them's a puppy. And then the other one was a pit bull cross, right? So I'm working with this pit bull cross and I'm just meeting the dog for the first time. And this dog is just pulling and pulling and pulling. And she's so lovely and she's so sweet, right? But she just keeps pulling. Like she's pulling me so hard. Like I can't go 1 foot without her pulling my arm off. And she doesn't listen. She doesn't calm down. No treat, nothing. There's no retention, no recall, nothing. And I'm looking at this dog's mouth and I'm just like, yo, bro, this is irresponsible as fuck. You got small kids. You got a puppy in the house. You cannot have a pit bull that's this out of control. Like she's not aggressive. She's not dangerous. She's not mean. There's nothing there that I'm seeing that's giving me aggression vibes. But still, you cannot have a dog that's this out of control that has a mouth like this that can clamp the way that it can. Because it's not like those little Shih Tzus that aren't trained and, ooh, they bit you and you got to get a shot. No, this is like you lose a leg. So I told her that, and she's like, oh my God, I'm getting scared. And I was like, no, don't get scared. It's just you have a 3-year-old son and you have a dog that has got a very big mouth that is, quite frankly, not under your control. So you have to do some training. Then I got on the live. Y'all remember that. And I said, who the fuck is calling me 15 times? It was her. The dog bit the other dog. clamped down, wouldn't let go. 7 minutes after I told her that you have a dog with this really big mouth. And so I'm feeling it in my heart at that moment. I'm like, did I create this? Did I create the paranoia that transferred from her to her dog, that nervous energy of like, oh my God, I didn't realize this dog could potentially be dangerous. And it's like, yo, bro, I love pit bulls. I love Akitas. I love German Shepherds. I love, Rottweilers. These are some of my favorite breeds. I've always felt that way. I've trained dogs for 20 years. I trained dogs. I used to volunteer as a dog trainer in summers when I was a teenager. I love dogs. Oh, fucking tie it back to Keyonte George. This is why I don't like Keyonte George. He does not like dogs. There you go. There's a Keyonte George tidbit for you. Anyways. But at the same time, I am a very cautious person. I am like very risk management oriented. And so if I had a 3-year-old child, I would never risk that child being around a Rottweiler who was not under perfect control. Like there are certain dogs where it's like you can be 90% confident with them. They're 90% trained. There's certain dogs where if you decide to get a pit bull, you better 100% train that pit bull because you don't know. Like you can't have a jumpy pit bull because you don't know what situation that creates. If that jumpy pit bull jumps at a Shih Tzu, the Shih Tzu bites the pit bull bites back, the Shih Tzu's dead. So it's like great power comes great responsibility, not to borrow a line from, Peter Parker's Uncle Ben Parker, but, Uncle Ben. But I think that's true. So there's a lot of just like morally just thinking about it. And it's just like, can we create goodness and badness depending on what we see in people, what we treat people like? If you start treating someone like a criminal, can you make them more criminal? You know what I mean? Like if you approach someone at a club and so let me tie this back to something else I was thinking about. There's a lot of shit I've been thinking about, and I just like right now I'm on a vibe and I just want to talk, and there's a couple things that I've been thinking about. Last night I was working on a video and I started watching a Vice documentary about caste system in India. Just personally very curious about the whole world. I love reading about Japan, Nepal, whatever, just anything that's going on in the world. And when I started to listen to what the Dalit people in India go through, they are the untouchable caste to people who don't, have a good grasp on India. India has a caste system in which, there's 4 castes of people, and then there's a caste of people below the 4 castes of people, which are Dalit. And they're basically slaves. Like they are servants, they are, custodians, they're people who treat, and so it started talking about how they're subhuman and how there was this one guy who committed suicide. I can't believe I mentioned that word. I'm going to get demonetized. I'm going to have to delete that part out. My bad. Fuck. My bad. That was triggering for some people. And there was one guy who committed because of abuse, and how the rates of Dalit people in post-secondary education was like 14%. And it got me thinking about how closely this situation mirrors to so many other places in the world where there's like massive discrimination against one group of people, whether that be Black people in South Africa, whether that be, Black people in the United States, darker skinned people in Asia. Like there's all sorts of, everyone's got their own version of the same fucking thing going on. And it's just like, how is it that so many people in so many different parts of life, so many different parts of the world, so disconnected from each other, all ended up with the same fucking system of one type of person is better than the other, and the type of person that's better deserves all this shit, and the type of person that's not better deserves something less. Tie this back. One of my favorite podcasters and YouTubers is Nikhil Pandey, Captain Sinbad, for those of you who know him. And I discovered him really early, and I got in touch with him when I think he was at like 10,000 subscribers or something like that, because I run a film festival and he's an actor, and there was just a natural symbiotic thing. And I've learned a lot from him as a YouTuber. And I was listening to a podcast that he did yesterday, and it was the 5 things that he wished he knew before he was 30, because he just turned 30 years old. And he's a super successful YouTuber now. He's got like 550,000 subscribers. He's got his whole own coaching business and everything. And so he said that his life changed, I think 2 years ago, when he allowed somebody to tell him how sexually desirable he was when I say sexually desirable, I mean like based on his face, based on his physique, how desirable was he to the opposite sex? And he got a score of 5 out of 10. And the reason that he got a score of 5 out of 10 was 2 reasons. Number one, he had too much fat on his face, which is to say that he wasn't trimmed out, which is something that I can identify with right now too. The second thing, which just shocked my bloody senses, was that he was Indian. He was Indian American. And Indian American people, when I don't mean Indian American like Native American, I know it can be confusing for people, but I mean Indian American like he is from India, his parents are from India, score the worst of any group of men with women on dating apps. Interesting, because I've also heard this to be true. And I heard this to be true growing up as a kid in Scarborough, and there were a lot of Indian people there. And I heard this to be true. And so here's my question then. His response to this was to aggressively start to make a ton of money, to get into really good shape, to fix his skin, to do everything to compensate for that. But my question then becomes, it's like, who the fuck determined what was and wasn't attractive, right? You know what I mean? Like suddenly we're gonna say like in 30 years this could be completely different based on how are we approaching the problem at all, right? So Rue LZ, not to be rude, bro, but if you want to talk about something else, start your own YouTube channel. I'm closing out a 3-hour live. I'm talking about something that's relevant. If it's going over your head, peace out. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to be here. That's cool. Like, I'm not going to take it personally if the live numbers go down from 200 to like 100. I appreciate y'all for being there for the basketball part, but this is relevant to something bigger than basketball, and we're trying to spark good conversations beyond basketball, because some of these conversations do bleed into basketball too, don't they? And I mean, it doesn't take a genius to fucking draw the parallel between, oh well, Nikola Jokic is very unathletic. Who the fuck determined what was athletic? And now when you see a pudgy kid, maybe you don't think the same way. Discrimination goes across barriers. It's not just about Dalit people. It's not just about slavery. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, sometimes you just have to think beyond your distractions, right? We have to think beyond that, because I think we're trying to become better people here. I would like to think that this channel is going to help you understand basketball better, but I would also like to think that this helps you understand. I've just been preing competition. I plan to do my own channel. Good luck with that, man. Let me know if I can help you in any way possible. All right. Okay. There are a lot of people who've been starting channels out of this community, and I am very, very happy to see that, because that was, if you recall, 2 years ago, that was really my goal. Anyways, before this comment sort of like derailed my train of thought, what I wanted to say really was that what you think is reality tends to become more like reality. Where this started and where this ended may not make a ton of sense to people, but I hope you can follow my train of thought. I apologize if it's a little bit scattered, but I just thought it was a lucid thought to have. Anyway, peace, y'all. Have a good one. And yeah, I'll talk to y'all later. Subscribe if you haven't already. Hit the like on the way out if you haven't already. That would really help a lot. And maybe I'll just clip out like the last 15 minutes of this live, because maybe nobody really needed to hear it. But yeah. Mario saying, what are your thoughts on Karis LeVert? I feel like he could have helped for a while and still could. Depending on what we do in the draft, he could work. But I'm not enamored with him. Let's just put it that way. All right. Gregory Rosendahl, it helped me understand both better. Thank you. Scott plays 2K. No need to clip it out. Yeah, 3-hour lives can be pretty intimidating. Okay. I know I'm really bad about adding chapters. If anyone wants to add chapters over the next hour, I'm going to go do something else. But if y'all, like, if somebody wants to do it, I will be forever thankful to you. If you want to add chapters, I will pin your comment. I will be so thankful to you if you want to add chapters to this. You just have to add like 6 or 7. Or maybe 5. Like, this is the Cason Wallace talk. This is the draft talk. This is the Gary talk. But I would be so appreciative. I see like a lot of channels, they have like users who consistently do that. I would be so thankful if y'all do it, because I hate doing it. I hate, like, because I usually like want to give like 2 hours before I watch something that I just did. And then by that time, I'm like, oh my God, like all the views are already gone and people are already frustrated there were no chapters. But for a 3-hour live, usually you want to have chapters. But yeah. Anyways, have a good one, y'all. Peace. Country Kong, make sure to add the Keyonte chapter. Yep. Hire someone to do it for every video? Yeah, I should. I definitely should. As this channel starts to make more money, I need to hire people to do shit that I don't want to do, for sure. All right, peace.